How's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of No Excuses. This time, hopefully, broadcasting live. I saw it say excellent connection. I see it buffering. I think we're good. So, uh, here with your two of the three favorite show hosts, Ara still.
And Vaul and no Fern. But Fern gave it the old college try, he did. The problem is that his local telecommunications company has other ideas, and those ideas do not involve him having any connection to the internet worth talking about. So, yeah, I guess they're just okay with cutting an isolated inland Australian community off from the rest of the world because reasons. Their infrastructure is just rubbish. Their infrastructure is significantly worse than New Zealand's even.
Yeah,
Um,
especially where Fern
and
is out in the sticks.
And it's post upgrade, it's worse than ours. So yeah, not really sure how they're managing to remain a part of the rest of the world, given how slack they are about their maintenance. But unfortunately, it has burned Fern this week because apparently Telstra went out there to do some upgrades, and
It broke.
yeah, yeah, they broke everything. So he can only just barely maintain any kind of connection to the internet, much less a constructive one that he can do anything with. So yeah, he tried, and then he lost connection so many times in the process that eventually he just gave up.
Yeah, and he said he's going to go off and do work like, a responsible adult.
Adult growth. But yeah, so that's why there's no Fern here. But we will try and do our best to mush on as always, and hopefully Fern will be able to get his internet sorted before too long. I can't imagine that the industry out there, because even though he's in an isolated place, the mining industry has a lot of dosh, and they are not going to be very impressed at all with the idea of just not having the ability to communicate with the rest of the world for an extended period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So their lobbyists will probably put some pressure on the telecommunications industry to sort their crap out before things get too hairy. But he's been in this state for about a week now, or the better part of a week anyway, with an inability to stay in contact.
Yep.
At any rate, we're here to bring you the latest news and games commentary for the week, such as it was. Although personally, I didn't see anything that I thought was particularly worth commenting on, but we'll do our best regardless. And if you'd like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com. You can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw, or join us in the Discord server, which you can get to by clicking on the Discord link provided in the show description underneath the show archive on YouTube.
Yes. So, on the stream today, you're watching me dump my resin, and I may go help Vol kill a child later. And yeah, not a whole lot going on this week for us. We got both of us were pretty busy with work. I don't think either of us have much to report for our weeks. I got a bit of stretching I can do with Relink because I did get some playtime on that a couple days this week, but that's about it. Warning: the stream's current bit rate is lower than the recommended bit rate.
Why you do this?
Please hold on. I will attempt to correct this in real time and hope it doesn't crash.
How reckless of you.
It's recommending 6,800.
I don't know, is that a lot or is that not much?
It's bigger than I had. I'm kind of winging all this. So we'll see if it stays happy after that. Hopefully that improves things a little bit. Okay, now it says it's excellent. Hopefully this doesn't make a freaking giant file size. I was trying to save space on a hard drive, is why I was turning down the bitrate a little bit, but we'll see. Hopefully nothing breaks. I should have a local backup if something goes. So yeah. All right. I got distracted by that. What were you saying?
I'm not sure I was saying anything. I'm pretty sure you just took over the conversation. But
Oh.
yeah.
So yeah, weeks. We'll start with yours, see where it goes, and I'll stretch where I can for whatchamacallit.
All right. So week for me has been a bit blah. Lots of things going awry at work in unplanned ways. Having some difficulties with some of our methods, just deciding to sporadically refuse to work, which is not supposed to be a thing, but evidently is. And I'm very frustrated with trying to resolve that. And apparently, like, the boss of bosses is going to become visiting soon, who has never actually been to our lab before because we're beneath his notice, I guess, or something. But yeah, which has basically got everybody in on the higher tier of management kind of in a tiz because they want to impress him or something. And so everybody is demanding my time to make their plans work out, as though I don't have enough to do. But oh my goodness, is anything in this region not electrified?
It is
Getting
Inazuma.
zapped by everything I walk past. But yeah, so I haven't had as much time to myself as I would have liked because I'm always running after the latest piece of chaos to descend. Um, let's see. I have completed the story of the new Blue Archive event, which is just it's more or less standard fare for one of their minor events. It's a little story about a couple of the characters from Red Winter, uh, basically having a squabble and then making up essentially. But the framing device is basically nakedly a takeoff of the manga Nana, which I've never read, but was incredibly popular in the sort of like the early 2000s.
I remember hearing
Um,
hearing its name floating in our circles. I never
but
read it either.
no, well, I mean, it's not real. We're not really the target audience. At least I don't get that impression, since it's sort of like it's a manga for women, really. It's the impression of the story that I always had. Um, but yeah, it's that's the framing device for it. But it's basically the usual shenanigans that you'd expect from Red Winter.
Being
The
being mustache
Secretariat,
commies causing
yeah,
problems.
Secretariat, the Labour Party, all of the usual suspects, um, getting involved and making a mess of anything constructive that attempts to happen. So not really much to comment on there. It does introduce to the permanent pool, I think, a new like 1 or 2 star, can't remember, who is, let me think. I think might be either elastic armor or sonic damage. I think one of those is the purple color on her. I think the idea being that they're trying to sort of populate the new armor slash damage type in preparation for the new raid that will come out in a few months that is focused around that damage type. So yeah, I'm not planning to roll on any of the characters for this event because they're just basically kind of unremarkable and don't really need them for anything. They don't fill any particular roles, and I don't particularly have any fondness for the characters. So yeah, that'll be left to sit. I enjoyed the event well enough. It's reasonably entertaining, reasonably silly. Um, this is pretty standard fare for the type of stuff that they put in between their actual big story events that matter type of. Um, yeah, so that's that. I don't actually know what's coming up next on Blue Archive. Yeah, I can't remember the schedule, but I don't think the next part of the main story is due for a while yet. Uh, they're still trying to sort of get their feet under them with the new raid systems that they've implemented recently, which honestly is both less work and more work. It's more work in the sense that you've got to build a team for every color, but it's less work in the sense that you only need to do it once because you rather than having a certain number of attempts per day during the raid event, you just accumulate tickets across the course of the week. So you can either use them up every day if you feel like making a new attempt every day, or you can just save them till the end of the week, figure out your strat, and then blow all your tickets on sweeps all at once. So it's convenient in that way, and it's sort of characteristic in it, I suppose, of Blue Archive, in that they seem to be always going out of their way to make themselves convenient for the people that play it, much like Pinecone did once upon a time. Never forget what they took from us.
Yeah.
But yeah. So moving slightly down the list of conveniences. I have not had a huge amount of free time to play things, but I have still played a bit more of Honkai Star Rail, and I'm still thoroughly enjoying what it's got on offer. Every time I do an event in Honkai Star Rail, or like do a sort of like a quest chain, I always end up dramatically underestimating the length and breadth of it. Like when I did the ghost hunting quest series, like I expected it to be like, oh well, you'll go on 2 or 3 ghost hunts and then you'll do a story event and it'll be over. But no, it actually goes on for quest after quest after quest after quest, and there's a lot of actual content in there. And I haven't finished the combat portions of it, because when you finish clearing sort of like a story branch of the quest, it will then unlock sort of like a challenge fight that you can do. And I haven't done most of those yet because my roster's not quite properly set up for full scale combat at my world level, so I haven't put in a huge amount of effort toward straight up attempting to complete combat challenges. So that's on the back burner. But I did a whole bunch of the rest of the questing, and there's quite a lot of them, with quite a lot of different sort of like themes and moods to them. Like there's some of the quests are quite some of them are quite dour in tone. Some of them are sad. Some of them are touching. Some of them are incredibly silly and hilarious. They sort of run the gamut, and there's lots of different sort of activities and things involved as well, including like little. Occasionally, there'll be like a little puzzle game or something. The challenges are not just the same one over and over again. They are if that was you trying to join my world and not some other Navia, this is really not a good time.
Oh yeah, I was just sneaking in.
I'm in the middle of fighting one of those lightning lower chills,
Oh.
and it is not my friend. But yeah, it's got a lot of meat to it that I didn't really expect. Normally, I expect most gacha games to sort of phone in their sort of like event quests, as opposed to making them like a humongous tentpole story event, which is what they appear to have done here. Like what goes on in that story with those characters is not really impactful on the setting as a whole or the characters as a whole. Although it is going to be, a significant amount of the time you spend with several of the characters is viewed through the lens of that quest, especially as far as Gwen Knifen is concerned. Since she's sort of like the streamer that is the center figure in kicking off the events. But yeah, there's a lot of content there. There's I suppose the criticism that I would give is that some of the puzzles are a little bit too trivial. They're a little bit too easy. There are some puzzles that I think are obnoxiously difficult in Star Rail, but they are very, very, very few compared to the ones that I think needed to be about 20% harder. Because with a puzzle, like, you don't want a puzzle to be so hard that outside of like a specific puzzle challenge setting, it's going to frustrate people. You don't want that. You don't want people getting frustrated. If the setting of the puzzle is this is a puzzle challenge, then it's fine to make it as frustrating as you want, because it's supposed to bend people's brains. But if the setting is oh well, this is just progressing the story, you want puzzles to be not too challenging, but you also don't want them to be so trivial that there's zero sense of accomplishment for solving them, because at that point it just becomes a chore.
Yeah, like
So
the go turn on the light bridges and then run all the way around and turn on the other light bridge.
Yeah, it's like, well, everybody can see the solution here, but you've just got to grind through doing it.
You just have to walk.
And yeah, and a lot of the puzzles in Star Rail are sort of like they verge on that, where it's just like, well, this isn't really this isn't really making me feel like I'm doing much of anything. It's just, it's kind of there. And there's not really, I don't know. I feel like they could afford to be a lot more ambitious with their puzzles
Yeah.
than they are. Um, there's certainly no lacking for variation in them. It's just the sheer level of difficulty leaves a little bit to be desired. Um, as a slight digression, I started another quest chain in Star Rail also, which is about revitalizing the Aram district, which is a shopping district on the Shanzhou Luofu. Um, that quest has a bunch of sort of logistical puzzles to it, but for some really strange reason, they included a hint system that I'd say calling it a hint system is a bit. It's not
Uh,
really the right thing to call it, because basically, if you take longer than about 10 seconds to solve the puzzle, which just manipulating the pieces of the puzzle will take longer than 10 seconds most of the time, it will just tell you the answer outright.
yeah,
And
Paimon's
so
guilty of this in Genshin a few times too.
I ended up getting frustrated simply because I felt like the game was sort of making fun of my intelligence by, what's that? You've been doing this for 10 seconds? Here, just I'll tell you the answer outright. I'll send you a photo of the completed puzzle. And it's like, I was trying to solve it, all right. How am I supposed to get any sense of satisfaction out of this if you just want to, wave the answer in front of me? Now, like, you can make sure that that window stays closed, although it's kind of easy to open it on accident. But it's still frustrating that they have so little faith in the player base to solve a trivially easy puzzle that they just want to just tell you the answer. And it's not a hint, it's not a suggestion, it's a photograph of the correct answer to the puzzle. That's
Yeah.
why? It's not necessary. It's not necessary.
They
But
find in Genshin they found kind of a happy balance with their recurring puzzles. I think in Sumeru, you know the elemental monuments that you light up all the time, and you just light them all up, and that's that.
yeah.
They start in Sumeru, including ones that where you'll be poking at them, and they'll just all turn off when you light them up, like you did something wrong, and you're like, oh, what did I do wrong? You start looking around the area, and eventually, after experimenting, you'll be like, oh, I got to turn them on in a certain order, and there'll be very slight environmental hints, like little symbols behind each one that have a different number of markings that tell you the order you need to light them up in. And the way they use environmental hints for this is different for each one that uses these. So it's not brain busting, but you do have to do a bit of exploring and looking around and using your spatial awareness to figure out, okay, what would be the logical order to hit these, and is there anything that indicates it? But they're not big puzzles. They're also real short ones. They stop it from being a just turn on the switches deal to actually being a little mini puzzle that's kind of fun to solve. So they find a balance there. But the Genshin and the Star Rail team apparently don't talk to each other at all. In fact, they probably burn each other's letters when they send them across the office, from what I can tell.
I sometimes I do wonder if there's like a legit there's a sort of like some degree of legit hostility there, because it's like, oh well, I expect that the Genshin team gets a lot of support because they've become the big cash cow thanks to COVID. Whereas the Star Rail team has the love of its actual player base, whereas the Genshin team gets nothing but abusive mail all the time.
Yeah,
So yeah, I can't help but wonder if there's actually some real acrimony there. Like, I've got no reason to believe that there is. It's just that their behavior is kind of weird, how segregated they are from each other for
yeah,
no real clear reason.
yeah. Because Genshin does have a few ideas that could alleviate that. It sounds like, other than just telling you the answer that they finally figured out. And Star Rail has ways to make the player base not send you fan mail that has arsenic in it. Maybe if they talk to each other, we could get better video games.
Could be, but yeah. At any rate, there are issues with these puzzles. I don't like the way that they try and baby you through them. and in a lot of cases there just aren't really any decently challenging ones to play with. They're just, you know, you'll exhaust the supply of simple ones, and there's not really a higher tier. The most of the difficult quote unquote content is just combat scenarios of various kinds, of which there are an awful lot, and a lot of the time I haven't bothered with them because honestly, because it feels like I'm not sure if I'm going to be wasting my time, since the difficulty of any given puzzle seems to be incredibly schizoid. Like as far as combat goes, like sometimes I'll start a fight that's part of an event, and the event fights, they're not in-game content, so they're not meant to be difficult. They're just meant to hold you up until you progress through them, type of thing. But I'll still occasionally launch one and then just get insta-jibbed by it, and I'll be like, oh, well, that's out of my reach, and I don't really understand why. What I was supposed to do other than die instantly. Am I supposed to have built my roster in a different way for this, or like I don't really know what's going on? And this happened to me a lot during one of the events that finished recently. The one on it was one on Space Station Herta, where it was basically just a bunch of challenge battles that had some special rules, and you could take some special power ups for them and so on. And it was not as overly complex, but the fights were just ridiculously difficult for me. Like really, really hard, and I couldn't work out what I was doing wrong. And I didn't know if I was doing anything wrong or whether it was just out of my reach by design, because it was supposed to be done by players with more advanced rosters. Because, to a certain point, they can only turn the difficulty down so far. If you have only got, as I did at the time, for more or less just pretty much free to play characters, and you're trying to do something which is a challenge for people with a mature roster that has been sort of tuned down, as it were, to your level, it's still going to be rough, because it's making assumptions about what you're capable of that don't necessarily hold. Like, you're not necessarily going to have, for instance, sustain options that are not March 7th and Natasha. Like, that might be literally all you've got to work with.
Get that teddy
And then
bear.
and then that's it. You just, if that's not a suitable loadout, if you can't afford to dedicate 2 slots to a frost sustain and a physical sustain, then I guess you can't participate in this event, because you're not going to be able to do damage fast enough. Because that's the thing, a lot of the event challenges, it's not a matter of can you survive the fight, it's a matter of can you clear the fight in a certain number of turns, or can you like get a certain amount of score by doing certain things during the fight, and so on and so forth. And this type of thing is sometimes just going to be out of the reach of a free-to-player's roster for a variety of reasons. There's not really anything to be done about it. It's just the way it is. But yeah, I do feel like there's some work to be done on like basically event balance in various ways. I think the way to keep the lower end players like myself feeling like involved and satisfied with their participation in the event is going to mainly be along the axis of making the puzzle type content feel meaningful, because like we have a sense of being behind as far as raw power is concerned, and we understand that we're behind because we joined the game later, and that there's only so much that you can do to ameliorate that, and that as a result, we know we're going to get more powerful in future, and eventually we might catch up and be able to participate in that content. But the way things are right now, that's just not on the cards, and that sort of falls within the bounds of acceptability, and that's why we're playing the game, is because we've already accepted that. But there's not really any reason to then go and make the player feel incredibly marginalized by pointing it out over and over again that they don't have the capacity to participate as well as they'd want at low levels. Like, if somebody is not at max level, they've probably started recently. That's just the way of things. There's not really any good reason to make a big deal out of that. So the way you balance that typically is that you put in content that doesn't hinge entirely on the combat. But I don't know. I think that it probably still works at very low levels. Like if your dudes are
Turned
like
off
level
the
20
electric
or
grandma.
30,
Come quick, come quick. I turned it off.
like, I've got no sprint. But the it probably works at really low levels where they haven't factored many things in. Like at really low levels, they don't factor in you having relics at all. So you can usually participate simply on sort of, I guess you could say, rock paper scissors combat, in the sense that you just need to, use the elements and the game mechanics correctly and you'll be fine. Whereas at my level, where I'm not at max level, I'm still progressing my level, but I've got, a couple things added to my roster. I've got reasonable level ups. I'm starting to get relics. At that level, they already start assuming that you're completely pimped out, which is not really a reasonable assumption to make. So yeah, it does feel kind of rough for me doing those things, because even if I can do the rock paper scissors part, even if I can use the mechanics correctly and have the right team compositions, it's still, man, it's a crappy rule. It's still going to be out of my reach in a lot of ways, and I'm sort of very frustrated with one aspect of the combat at my level, which is simply that I get forced constantly back into using double sustain, and like I don't have any choice about it. And I can sort of understand why, because with if you do not calibrate the game difficulty around double sustain, if you calibrate it around single sustain, it means anybody can use double sustain and romp the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, they've already calibrated that by having things that are based on number of cycles or number of score points that you get by doing things. So there's no need to double compensate. But the damage output that I'm facing all the time basically forces me back into double sustain every time. Now, I'm sick of having to build every single team around March 7th and Natasha, who are both free to play characters, who are both lackluster, and are generally permanently glued to my roster, because the moment that I sub them out for anything other than like the simplest kinds of farming, I immediately get killed in one shot by everything. Like, I don't know why teams just seem to shut down and stop working if I don't have double sustain, but that seems to be the case, and I don't really grasp it. I don't really understand what's going on. I just have to, I guess to some extent I've just got to tool around with it a bit more. And when it comes to farming, like doing calyxes and that, it is definitely more efficient not to be double sustain, and I can get by without it. But it just seems that I don't know if it's a function of my gear level. It might be, since much like Genshin, there's a pretty comic amount of your durability that is hinges on that artifact that has HP on it. Like in Genshin, if you don't have pimped flowers on your characters, by the time you're at about world level 5 or 6, you're going to get one shot by everything.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. You need the flower. The flower needs to be leveled. Otherwise, you have no health. And everything is horrible forever. I just realized that I didn't flag that the electroculises that I've gotten on the map because I was talking. And I need to do that now, because otherwise I will forget. And it will be bad for me later when I'm trying to actually hunt them. I've already gone through the process of idly picking up Culises in Leeway without doing any kind of tracking, and I deeply regret the process. So, not going to make that mistake again.
I did not do that very hard for Inazuma and Sumeru. I only marked the ones that were out of the way. And in Sumeru, I wish I had done that.
I'm not going to take the risk ever again. End of story. It took me forever to find the Leeway ones.
I was able to successfully do the Inazuma ones without too much tracking, but left that poor Sele on the roof, under rough. But
But,
Yesumber's just so big.
yeah, so the generally speaking, I'm enjoying everything about Star Rail except for the fact that my progression is in the same doldrums that it wound up in on Genshin. Like
Yeah.
when I was at my most frustrated with Genshin, is at that point where you are high level but not high enough for everything. And there just seems to be this sort of a weird kind of trough in the leveling process that occurs. And it sort of occurs in a lot of games with levels in them. You can find it in a lot of games where it's like the game designers couldn't decide whether they were going to treat you like a high level player or a low level player.
Yeah.
And as a result, they just defaulted to high level to be safe, and you can't do anything a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I don't play Star Rail, and there's not multiplayer anyway, so I can't come help you get a bunch of artifacts that'll get you over the hump.
Apparently I've been helping you. So, but
Oh, you
yeah,
getting
because
all my credits for farming the EXP node
I
to dump my resin?
I am getting some credits out of you, but that's about it. Apparently, your roster is enjoying the help of my Black Swan, but yeah, I'm not that concerned about that. Like I can, with a little care, I can quite adequately farm the relic domains for my level. I don't think I've really had too much difficulty with that. Am I missing a? Oh,
On the rough, still on the rough. Oh,
but
I
yeah,
lost him. Where'd he go?
I don't know where he went. I don't see him. Electriculus, just not even once.
Yeah,
Um,
get up high.
but you took the Electrogrun, so I can't go up there.
Not up there that I saw.
Only one person can take the Electrogrun. But
Oh, here it is. I found him.
but I've completely forgotten what I was saying. Oh right, yeah, I can quite adequately farm artifacts at this point. For my level, I think there's about 2 ranks above me, something like that. But at the rank that I'm at, you can get gold ones, and that's what I'm basically aimed at. And I'm currently thinking my current thinking is that what I really need is a jump start to my power, so that I'm not constantly stuck in a posture of barely scraping along. So I'll probably invest quite a bit of time pausing in my other advancement to just focus on farming relics to the point where my relics are meaningful. Does this cannon do anything?
You will
There's
eventually
nothing
use
interactable here.
You'll eventually use it to blow up in a quest the door that goes to the radiation zone,
I see.
and then do many daily quests to turn off the radiation in the radiation zone. This is the quest line that I was complaining about all the time in Inazuma.
Right.
The one
But
that's super aggressively time gated for no reason at all.
please don't steal my ocean mushrooms because I also have a Yomiko.
I don't need them anymore anyway. But
You finished with them.
I'm done with them.
Yeah, so I'm currently since I finished the primary story for Honkai, I'm backtracking through a pile of other story content of which I've got a grotesque quantity. It seems to vary pretty wildly in quality. They've clearly got quite a few different members of the quest team working on quite a few different projects, because some of them are just sort of a little bit blah. Like the one where you're working with the Luofu's storyteller to try and work out a more blockbuster version of your adventures in order for it to be more saleable. That one's kind of just dull, because the guy that you're working with is incredibly obnoxious. He's supposed to be funny, I think, but I don't find him funny at all. I think he's just obnoxious. And and it just boils down to doing a bunch of waves of trash enemies, it seems like. It's got rewards though, and the rewards are pretty hefty. Like, generally speaking, anywhere where a quest in Genshin is of a sort of scope where they'll reward you 40 or 60 Primogem, you would get 120 from Star Rail. Like, it's just literally doubly generous as sort of like a average watermark
Mm.
compared to Genshin. Which is, I suppose, why there's so much acrimony between the two fandoms, because it's just like it's the Honkai Star Rail people seem to be swimming in currency all the time.
Yeah, like me
But
being able to accrue enough currency for Sparkle to do a few pulls for is not outside the realm of possibility in Star Rail with just the amount of crap they give you for completing stuff.
yeah, it's quite generous generally. But yeah, so I've done the story parts of the ghost hunting now. I enjoyed it. It was incredibly silly. It's a bit localized. I can I can understand it if not necessarily quite forgive it. Uh the way that it's been adapted, simply because like Western internet culture and Eastern internet culture differ so strongly that like the lingo and that just doesn't translate. There's no adequate uh way of conveying it. The best you can hope for is to bolt on like cringy Western internetisms, because there's really no way to make the meme knowledge of being a Japanese or a Chinese internet shit poster translate, because you don't have that background knowledge, and really something that it's not something that can be explained by adding culture notes either. Because I mean, that's the usual argument in favor of localizing more faithfully to the literal meaning, is that you can explain a lot of those things in culture notes. But in the case of internet culture, that's really a lot harder to do, because internet culture is basically meaningless bullshit most of the time. That is
And
incredibly high context
and it
and
also
very
moves
very low
so
on
fast.
literality.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
also
it's also going to date itself real quickly, which is why I don't like the localization aspect of it, because usually the people who are involved in localization have no idea what constitutes a good meme, because they're libtards and everyone knows the left can't meme. Like, if you look at like right wing memes, they're sort of imperishable. Like the attack helicopter meme, for
yeah.
instance, everybody knows that meme. Everybody, and it's one that makes the progressives incredibly salty, to the point where they have tried to turn it into an insult, except that nobody takes them seriously, because their way of doing that is not funny or mimetic. It's just kind of cringe. But
Hmm.
but yeah, so the localization is a bit spotty in places, because I mean that quest chain is about a streamer, it's about a live streamer, and so they've done their best, and I think it's adequate. And I'm willing to forgive it to some extent, because the very specific type of culture they're working with kind of needs to be treated like that. It's still annoying seeing a character refer to anybody as fam, though. But
Yeah. We
there's no
still
getting around it, really.
we still need Bop Child. We can go Bop Child.
I guess we can go kill a child. It's a very unfortunate sort of turn of phrase. I need to heal first because I've got no health. But yeah, it was quite a lengthy quest chain. There was a lot to do, a lot to see. The story was not like not one of those stories that has is like edge of your seat compelling or anything like that, but it was quite serviceable to drive an event, much in the way a lot of Blue Archive stories are. Like, they're a story that the purpose is to keep you entertained. It's not to change your reality, man. So yeah, I thought that it was pretty good. I've started some of the other ones. I picked that one to do at random, more or less, and it was quite enjoyable. I think it's one of the more recent ones, though. So currently, I'm trawling through some of the older content, and it's quite obvious where the development has taken place. There's not very much mystery there. It's definitely they learn lessons, and they learn them quickly, because the development from the early quests through to the later quests is very obvious. God damn it, I know I don't need to do anything, but it's still annoying not being able to get any crystals.
That goes too far.
But, yeah, I'm having a good time with it still. I'm well into the phase of needing to get gear though, which means I've got to do the thankless task of rolling on gear for stats because the system is pretty much the same as it is in Genshin with all of its warts.
Crits don't exist today.
The 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 system seems to be more or less the same. They've got certain stats that are fixed, certain stats that are not fixed. I didn't get a thingy.
Well, at least you got LA crystals.
I got a gold alley crystal.
Ooh.
That's like only the second time I've ever seen that. I mean, it's frost one, so I don't need it, but
That Rosaria will eventually need to get leveled, maybe.
I have to go fight the giant waffle flower for that.
That ain't
But
exactly a colossal undertaking.
I know, but the problem is that I feel kind of like I feel like I'm losing any time I spend resin on the waffle flower. It's like, oh, really? Oh, that's probably what's going to drive me to bump my world level up simply because I resent spending resin on the whopper flower so much.
Oh, the Whopper Flower.
But guess we'll do Doggo as well. There's more teleport points. So I'm now deeply involved in rolling on gear and being frustrated by constantly rolling effect resist all the time. Is it? It is in Star Rail. It is fixed that you cannot roll a gear's an item's main stat as a substat. Is that also true in Genshin?
Yeah.
I can't even remember.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if an item has attack percentage as its main set, you cannot also get it as a subset.
Yeah. But yeah, the big difference in Star Rail though is the existence of speed as a stat. It's always like the $1,000,000 question is like, is speed more important here or is attack more important here? Is having more turns more important or is making those turns count more important? And for a lot of characters, it's sort of either it boils down to much of a muchness or a matter of preference, but for some characters, it's actually completely specific to who else is in your team comp because depending on what buffs you can get, like diminishing return seems to be kind of an important consideration in Star Rail, a very important one.
Can you wait so that it's not raining when we fight the ice doggo?
What, you don't want to do Iron Man mode?
I mean, we can.
It's not like he's not going to die in one shot. Remember, I haven't put my world level up.
Yeah, he is doggo.
He's got no hit points.
All right, summon doggo.
I say, baiting out disaster. It stopped raining anyway. It's not raining in this arena. I see my stamina bar moving around the screen.
I have 2 bullets. That did 20,000 damage. Dog doing?
Did you get hit?
Yeah, I'm not really paying attention. Here, right now, right here. Oh, right, he's in cutscene land right now. Is underneath his butt? Got a vacuum.
Vacuum. Okay, what is it this time? Ring of Boreas, same as every single week.
Still want to trade you. I still haven't got any. I got a ton of lockets
I can't get anything else. It's the only thing I ever get.
and nose.
Ridiculous. Anyway. Yeah, so I'm farming relics for Black Swan at the moment, since she's sort of like the hard carry, as it were, insofar as a dot team has a hard carry. She's getting the most attention right now because she applies lots and lots of effects, but her actual rate of getting them to stick is not awesome. So gear helps a lot with that because effect hit rate is really important for dot teams. Are you just going to bully the Whopper Flower because
Yeah.
that's not very nice? um, but yeah, it's the system works similarly to Genshin, but the priorities are in a lot of ways more clear cut. I feel like it makes more sense, the decisions that you make, like the because you've got such a well defined purpose for each character, which is not
Hmm.
something that's quite so true in Genshin. So if you've got a dot-based character like Black Swan whose entire shtick is getting effects to stick to a target, it makes total sense that you're going to focus on effect hit rate, for instance.
You got a domain
And
you need
it's
to do?
well, I don't really think so, because none of the good ones are open right now. What I really need is more Ningguang books, but they're not open until tomorrow.
Okay. You got stuff for your Skyward Atlas? What does that take?
Gold Atlas is maxed already.
Okay, so you already had all the stuff for that or farmed all the stuff for that?
Yeah, it didn't take very long.
Yeah, weapons don't
It
take
took me
very.
like It took me like 2 days or something. A day, 2 days worth of resin to get all of the stuff I needed.
Yeah,
It didn't take very.
this is a pattern with weapons. They just don't take that long to level up. I don't know
The
why.
problem is the damage that it did to my reservoir of crystals.
And Mora,
Yeah, the more hurts. The more is not in a great state.
I used condensed resin on Mora nodes this week.
That's extreme measures.
I was at like 1,000 Mora.
Yeah, I think upgrading Skyward Atlas took me about 1.5 million more or something like
Hmm.
that.
What's your damage been upped by?
Not really. Not really at all. It's sort of like having the solar pearls buffs up all the time,
Okay.
and it just comes in the form of damage rather than crit.
Oh, I guess. Okay, so you don't have to crit as hard as much anymore, but it's now just raw damage.
Yeah. So I'm doing about the same amount of base output as I would if I was maintaining the very sort of disciplined rotation that you need in order to get the most out of solar pearl. Now it just sort of happens on its own no matter what I'm doing.
I see.
Plus a little bit. Like the damage has gone up a little bit, but it's other than that, it's more or less the same as if I was being hyper disciplined with Solar Pearl. Because you've only got the damage windows on Solar Pearl are only 6 seconds long, so you've got to be very particular about how you use your abilities.
Yeah.
And now I don't need to do that; I can just spam, which is very relaxing.
I need to get.
Except when I get trolled. So I was rolling on the weapon banner for Yaimiko in the hopes of getting her signature weapon, which I didn't. Instead, I got Skyward Atlas, which, while I have mixed feelings about that because Skyward Atlas is like up all the time, it's also very rarely on rate up these days. So, and it is the best in slot all rounder weapon for Ningguang. So, every reason for me to want one. So I've got that now, and I've upgraded it, and it's performing quite well. It's performing the way I wanted. It's basically acts as an enormous attack stat stick. And that's pretty much what it does. It does have another effect though, which is it summons this little orb thing that helps you do damage. It doesn't do much damage. Like it's like basically like an extra jade that goes off now and again in terms of output. The problem is that it functions like a little pet. and it is incredibly belligerent to anything that gets within its aggro radius. So if you're trying to sneak around behind something and it happens to have procced recently, it's going to have an opinion about that hilichurl over the hill there. And it's going to express that opinion whether you like it or not. So, yeah, it can be a bit of a troll. But the weapon is generally performing very well. I don't have, like I was saying, I don't have to be as disciplined as I do with Solar Pearl. Like, it just works. It just works. Like any kind of Todd Howard product, it just works.
I see. I need to bop the domain that gives the skill damage set for Yaimiko if you that, or if you just
Well, I mean, I do have a Yaimiko, so I could harvest from it.
yeah.
I just need to get out of combat first because I am being harassed by many treasure hunters.
And
Right, I'll just hit the ultimate. I don't know why I conserve it.
because Yaimiko, there are a lot of good arguments to make for her on Hyper Bloom type or Aggravate teams that all require the Gilded Dream set, and I have a bunch of that set. But the thing with Geo teams is they don't need Elemental Mastery. They need 0 Elemental Mastery everywhere. Also, I'm gonna need a
They
Barbara.
need Geo teams are their reputation, their very well earned reputation in the community is as the Unga Bunga team. When you really want to thumb your nose at mechanics and just Unga Bunga your way through fights.
Yeah, so
You
we
have to
need.
pay a hefty cost for it, and your damage will never be like dick waving contest damage compared to, you know, like the real damage builds. But the only thing that will ever be asked of you is to Unga your Bunga.
That is true. Also, I will need you to bring a Barbara because this is the Robo one.
Ugh, but my Barbara's so weak.
Just make
Uh,
things wet.
yeah, I will moisten. I will moisten. Don't worry, I can moisten.
Just I will seed them, put them in the matrix, and then electrocute the baubles.
Barbara's.
We're gonna try this without moving the entirety official's gear set onto catching this time and see how much of a damage drop off that is. I could try it with just aggravate and spread, but historically that hasn't worked out for me.
I should probably put a decent weapon on Barbara since I've got this solar pill just sort of kicking about.
Give her that prototype amber.
Oh, actually, I think she's already got the prototype Amber.
That's what my barber's
I've
using.
sort of, I don't usually think about it very much because I don't use Barbara very often. And usually when I do, it's in like real panic hours. But yeah, my Genshin progress has basically been non-existent. I haven't done very much on Genshin at all. What I did do is I did last week after the show and in the day following, I did Yoimiya's quest and Ayaka's quest in the Inazuma storyline. And that is a very bizarre and disjointed way to write a story that I don't understand how you could ever conclude that it was good or adequate even, because it doesn't make a blind bit of sense at all. It's just nonsense. The Yoimiya one, the only issue with the Yoimiya one is that it doesn't really have anything to do with anything.
It's just a thing for Yoimiya. It's just a character story.
Yeah, like it has no bearing on anything. And since she's sort of a relatively minor character in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter all that much what she does. What should I do? I use my condensed resin. The hell. Yeah, it's just kind of a non-event, really. Like, and it's a nice enough story. Like, she is a likable character, and it is fun to spend time with her. She's got pretty good waifu potential, being that she's, you know, generally amenable person, even if she never shuts up. But
She's a very happy girl.
she doesn't matter to the plot. The only reason that they force that on you is because it has to take place in a certain political environment, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Only when the policies of Inazuma are as they are can that story play out the way that it does. But that's the only reason. It has nothing to do with the greater events in Inazuma whatsoever. Which is just makes it really weird that they sort of forced it on the main plot for some reason.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like they even call Yoimiya's character quest sheet that I just did today, part 2.
Yeah, I don't understand what they're thinking. But yeah, it is what it is. They decided to do this thing, and they sure did do it, and
And
not really sure how or why. It is just there.
the Yoimiya one
So that was
works really good with Luma, and the Ayaka one though, you're going on a date
okay.
with her.
So the problem with the Ayaka one is that it's chapter 2 to a story to which chapter 1 doesn't exist, and this is kind of an issue. Um, Basically, the Ayaka story is your stock standard anime sheltered princess characters arc where they date the harem protagonist, right? You could find this in any harem anime because there's always going to be a rich girl character and she'll always be sheltered and she'll always not have very many friends and she'll have to learn to open up, etc., etc. You know, all the usual tropes. It's pretty standard stuff. The issue is that you don't get any kind of introductory arc to demonstrate the issues that are causing Ayaka trouble. Because Ayaka's problem is that she feels isolated. She feels like she's only invested entirely in the practice of, you know, keeping up appearances for political purposes because of her important position as the Kamisato princess, basically. She's the one of the faces of the commission of which her family is in charge now, having their parents having passed away, and this has caused her to feel isolated, etc., etc. Now I know all of this, but the only reason I know all this is because they tell you over and over again. But that's all they ever do. They just tell you over and over again. You keep getting told. You have no reason to believe that that is the case based on anything that you see. Because what you see is that everybody in town loves Ayaka. They want to talk to Ayaka. They want to spend time with Ayaka. They want the best for Ayaka. They love having her around. They wish she was around more often.
That sand has
That's
primary stat and garbage secondary.
no. I'm just getting HP, 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 HP. But yeah. So basically, everything that they show you fails to support. It's not necessarily counter to her claims, to the claims of the story about Ayaka's experience of life, but it does not support it in any way.
Let me do some artifact swapping, because this is not going good without putting the LA Mastery gear on catching.
It's just very, I don't know. It's not. It doesn't ring true. Nothing about it really rings true. It's all based on you are informed of these experiences that Ayaka has had, and you are given an incredibly labored sort of explanation based on Ayaka's mother's decisions and lifestyle and so on, and etc., etc. So that's one part of it. One part of it is that there is clearly a plot arc where you go from, like, because your introduction to Ayaka has the traveler, whether it's Ether or Lumine, being outright hostile to Ayaka, seeing Ayaka as a person with suspect intentions who is trying to force you to participate in her personal war. Actually, give you bonus.
More matrices and more.
Actually, use official for this so that Oz can do some Oz things. But yeah, it's very. That's one problem, is that there is this plot arc where you learn to trust Ayaka, and Ayaka learns to treat you as a person and not a means to an end. Like, there's definitely like the anime plot arc, which is supposed to precede the things that are actually taking place. And you never see that. It doesn't happen on screen. If it happens at all. I don't know whether a story like that was ever written or was intended to be there or anything. You just, what I know is that you never see it. So that's one problem. The other problem is the sort of very bizarre experience of the plot as it closes out in the second half of the story, of Ayaka's little story, is it's the only time really that I've seen outside of some of the hangout material. Some of the hangout material is a bit waifu bait. Outside of the hangout material, this is the only time that the game gives you something that is explicitly a romantic rendezvous. The only thing that prevents that from being literally the case is the fact that there is this flying lavender melon the entire time present.
Good old Paimon there.
Yeah, mate, being a chaperone. So it comes off very, very weird when you illuminate, because it's clearly written as like the date scene in a shonen romance plot. Yeah, it just the whole thing is a little bit jank, and it's got all of these like super common shonen romance tropes and shonen romance scenes. Things play out in the way that they would in the romance plot thread of any kind of shonen manga. Oh my goodness, I just got mustaches. Only mustaches.
I got a mustache
All
with
mustaches.
I got a mustache with HP percent on it. Actually, that in the world where my YOLO pull gets me Nouvelette, that one might not be bad.
No, mine are definitely bad, no matter who I'm pulling for. It's mustache season all up in this place. But yeah, so that whole scene is kind of weird, especially like it gets double underlined by like the completely unnecessary dance scene at the end.
Oh, where she gets her wet socks?
Yeah, like that's a scene for an anime, not a game among where she is just one among many characters, and when they're functionally at war at that, and it's totally like this only makes sense in a romantic context. This behavior, it doesn't fit with what's going on generally, unless you are going to concede explicitly that this storyline was meant to be romantic. But of course, they can't concede that. They can't concede that because this is a game with lots and lots of characters and everybody's got their own favorite waifu, etc., etc. That's the way this game is actually built in reality. So they can't make it explicitly romantic, except that they've done everything that they would if they had. And it makes the whole story come off very bizarre in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Funnily enough, it seems that her brother gets more waifu points than she does with the community.
People do love her brother an awful lot. Like I think that Ayaka would be more popular under circumstances where she was not just one standard unit character archetype and had actually been given the plot arc where she gets to be treated like a real person. And number two, she would be more popular if she wasn't like this particular storyline, and the fact that it is mandatory basically forces her on you as a sort of pseudo romantic interest, whether you like her as a character or not, which is just going to make a lot of people dig their heels in, to be honest.
Yeah, I was not a particular super fan of Ayaka's story, and her story just made me go, nah.
It's a very bizarre thing, and like it's not like Ayaka doesn't have a lot of fans, but she would have a lot more fans if she wasn't like, a weird sort of compulsory love interest in a game where there's not really any room for that type of thing. Oh my goodness, I'm so unlucky.
That goblet
I
is
get
useless.
that from the set which gives you the crit rate increase with HP changes. I get those items versus the other set at a rate of about 5 or 6 to 1. and I don't know why. What did I do to deserve this curse?
The only set from this piece that I've got that's workable is it's got a workable primary stat and attack percent, and its substats are god awful.
I think I've got like from the actual set that I'm looking for. I've got like about 3 flowers that are decent, not good, but decent. But I have no other parts that are decent. It's just flowers every time. But like I said, I get about 6-1 in favor of the other set. So, like I've destroyed to make coffers. I've destroyed about 24 pieces of the of the of that set. I have about 24 left, I would guess, and I have kept every single one of piece that I've got of the other set, and I've got like about 6 of them. Like it was really bad. Don't know what is going on with my drop rates.
And this one won't be available in coffers until probably until Shiznaya comes out.
Being Barbara with this thing shooting ice everywhere is
Terrifying.
hazardous.
Trying to get little spider monkey things. Oh, I'm just
I
bounced.
could use Xingqiu, but basically me doing this means you can ignore your health bar. So
Yeah, I can just tank through it as long as I'm not the one getting wet.
but yeah, so I did that. I haven't made any real progress on the rest of the story. I don't know how much is left or where it's going or anything like that, but you seem to have a dim opinion of it as far as what happens from henceforth.
Yeah, that was the high point.
Really, that's the high watermark.
The high watermark is the first island. I mean that the story quests that elaborate on it aren't bad afterwards, but they're just, why couldn't you tell this stuff in the main story?
It just seems like an awful lot has gone wrong with the writing of that. Like it's, I don't know. I don't know what ought to be concluded about it other than I'm not particularly amused by that story.
Yes, Sumeru is so much better with its storytelling. You'll wonder if it was written by the same people and they didn't just axe the whole writing team after Inazuma.
Well, for all we know, they did. Like, I'm not really up with the internal goings on at Hoyo.
The heck is that? Oh, that's this energy recharge with flat stat sands for the HP up and down set.
HP goblet, defense goblet. What did I do to deserve this?
Yeah, I imagine it'll be much the same experience in Star Rail when you're trying to eventually farm for artifacts, because
I'm here to tell you it hasn't been. It really hasn't been.
you got more stats to work with on your gear with effect resistant speed or effect hit effect resistant speed.
But there are very limited numbers of stats that really matter. Like if you can get a couple of stats, like most people consider it a pretty decent if you manage to get one primary stat and maybe 1.5 secondary stats that are good, and then you're sorted. And the spread of primary stats that are available for a lot of pieces is very narrow.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to run the risk of getting, you know, the really terrible stats on everything. There's like, I think the chest piece has a huge number of different stats that you can get, but other than that, that's not really a problem. And also you can use your items that you've got to pick a primary stat and forge a relic if you really want to. If you're looking for one that you know has got a really low drop rate, like effect hit rate rope, I think, has a really low drop rate reputedly. So a lot of people will just forge those. But yeah, I would kind of like my impulse is to look forward to seeing the rest of the Inazuma story, except that you have gone to great deal of effort to disabuse me of any notion that there's anything to look forward to.
No, because if I don't break that to you, you're just gonna give up on the game immediately. Like you're gonna be like, oh no, if this if this is all they got, there's no way they'll be able to recover from this. I'll just tell you ahead of time. No, no, it's bad, and it's really stupid. And Sumeru is much better. And honestly, after you do the hole, after you do Inazuma, you're in Sumeru and you're off to the races. And the story moves at light speed if you just monofocus on it from this point on. Like the next 4 acts of the story will feel like they could have been condensed into 2.
Well, I mean, it seems like they probably were since you just fade to black and spend 2 weeks with the Resistance.
Yeah, you're just about at that point.
But yeah, I'm individually like I don't have any problem with like Yuemiya's story or even Ayaka's story, but they feel like a little bubble of story that was bolted on in a strange place where it doesn't really quite belong. Goodness, this is rubbish.
That's a
Total rubbish.
mustache.
I feel like I'm flushing my resin down the toilet.
That's okay. That was the end of my resin anyway, so I can't farm anymore. I saved my resin for or my primos for what you call it, girl.
But yeah, I'll push through with the story. I'll probably I don't have the personality that requires of me to 100% any given zone. I don't care about that. I probably will autistically get all the culises because I was sort of bushwhacked into doing it in Mondstadt and Leeway, and now the thought of not doing it just seems kind of weird. But I don't think that I care to do much more than that. Yeah, I think that it'll probably be a case of I'll do the bare minimum, I'll move on with my life. Um, the I'm not really that excited about the whole. I'm sort of dreading it, in fact,
The whole is more
because
of a gameplay exploration zone than a story zone. There's basically no story there.
but I have to get it out of the way because I know that it is interleaved in the story in this particular spot following Inazuma. Therefore, I can't move on until it's done because I know that it was quote supposed to unquote be done.
Yeah, well, they're gonna block your Dainslift quests and stuff if you don't do it. So
But yeah, so yeah, the hole is a thing. The hole is a thing. You seemed to get pretty salty at the hole a few times,
I
which
was
bothers me because if an exploration factor was enough to wind you up, it's going to drive my patience completely out of existence.
my thing about the whole was I kept expecting it to end. It was my first experience with a proper post patch subzone or post region subzone, and I didn't understand that those are like Chinyu Vale. They're huge. So I thought I was going to be jumping onto the main story and getting on with it because I did it before Inazuma, and I had been putting the main story on hold for weeks at that point while I got my characters ready for the max world level and ran around and stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm going to clean up the side quest while I'm here. I'll go do the whole. And I did not understand that that means this that the everything about the whole is ginormous. Like
But
when
you've
they
done Dragon Spine.
yeah, but Dragonspine I did in the entire afternoon I was talking to you on Discord that one day. Like I pretty much finished it then, aside from Keyless cleanup. But the whole keeps going, and if you're like me and you want 100% the whole, you're gonna be in the hole a while. I do
Oh,
like the
hell no.
mechanics in the hole, but I don't think it's got that bad of a any kind of mechanical stuff going on there. Um,
Yeah, I'm not intending to 100% any zone. I don't have the time or the patience for that.
yeah,
It's too hard. Doing the cleanup is too much of a nuisance because I prefer to just mosey along at my own pace. And if you take that approach, cleanup basically becomes borderline impossible because you have to cover all the same ground all over again. It's frustrating, and can't be bothered with that. Like I did Dragon Spine more or less at a stretch as well, but I got to 94% and stopped. Like no, can't be bothered. Too much work.
Yeah, I think my Dragon Spine's chilling at like 99%, and I don't want to go back to get that last percent. Because you know it's just a common chest somewhere that I missed. Or a random Sele.
Yeah. Anyway,
Like a bullywop flower.
basically the only headroom left on developing my Ningguang's power level is the talent books, which take an eternity to stack up and off of, and is shackled to my total inability to get a hold of lockets from the dog. The dog which only has Ring of Boreas ever. Never drops anything else. I do not know why this is.
I wish
I
it
do
only
not know what
dropped
Ring
Ring
of
of
Boreas is
Boreas.
even supposed to be. But yeah, so I've burned through nearly all of my my whatever the other thing was called.
Oh,
That allows you to convert them.
yeah.
Fortunately, I'm still I sort of can casually convert them because I've got such utter contempt for Ring of Boreas that I don't worry about whether or not it needs to be conserved for any other purpose because I'm just so sick of getting them. I'm sure that as soon as I don't need lockets anymore, something else will get in the way, but that'll be a long time coming because whatchamacallit,
Ooh, that was a big one when I waited for you to give me bullets.
official uses lockets as well, doesn't she?
Does Fischl use lockets or rings?
I don't know.
What do you use? I'll tell you. Find her in my list. Prinzessin.
I'm pretty sure it's lockets. I mean, she needs skill books. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
she uses lockets.
the the farming in Genshin is just brutal compared to Star Rail, and mostly it's due to that low resin cap. Because I basically if I play a little bit every day, I never go into to slow resin on Star Rail. It's not necessary because it takes roughly 24 hours to fill your entire resin bar. And so, provided that you log on roughly the same time every day, you're basically going to waste little to nothing. And that basically means I am able to progress at the same rate as a normal person who, well, at the same rate as an abnormal person who doesn't need to hold down a full-time job. Like, if you aren't spending money, you can only acquire resin at a fixed rate. I'm going to call it resin because Trailblaze Power takes too many syllables. But that in Genshin is sort of hedged out for me because I'm like way over cap every single day on resin.
Yeah, because
Like there's only 160 slots and it charges at the same rate, which means that you've got to log on basically every 16 hours, which is impossible.
yeah, and the condense. They really should bring over the slow resin system, and if they're going to keep the 160 cap, especially at this point, the people that are coming into the game fresh will need to play catch up with everybody else. And there are so many characters now that everybody that isn't the bleeding edge has very much need of a bunch of materials out there, and we just can't farm them without the resin. There's no reason for them not to bump it up to 240 and to give us slow resin to carry over.
3 words: Genshin could never.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if it's like they maybe they've just got like an internal company mandate that you never go back and fix anything because it's a waste of resources. Because I mean that's really what it feels like. It feels like because I mean the most people who work in software are at least a little bit autismal, and generally speaking, having something that's a bit broken in the background that could easily be fixed tends to bother people like that. So if they had the free reign to make the decision on their own, I think they probably would have fixed it, which makes me think that there is a company policy that says you are not to waste time fixing on things that the player base has already accepted as reality, because you're not going to make any money off of that.
Yeah, they I would not be surprised if they have their overlords slave driving them to just focus on what comes next.
Because I mean, from what you say, it sounds like they have been sort of like consistently making little improvement here, little improvement there, moving forward.
Yeah, like
But the fundamentals that have already been accepted never change.
yeah, you'll notice this most specifically was when I went from Inazuma to Sumeru in terms of gameplay anyway, and the grapple points and how they're used in Sumeru. Like it's just such a better and system that they've got for the grapple points in Sumeru, and how you actually use your camera to angle where you want to shoot. You have to look at the node you want to go to.
But yeah, it's frustrating, and I would like for them to change a lot of things, but I don't know if they ever will, and they certainly won't if there's a policy preventing them from doing so, which is what really feels like it's the case a lot of the time.
Yeah,
Um,
Chinese.
we're kind of stuck like that.
Yeah. On the plus side, Chinese players move as a unit more, and if they put a 5-star selector in Star Rail, they may just actually riot.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time. They they nearly destroyed Honkai Third over like a perceived slight.
Wasn't that the Bunny Girl incident?
Yeah, and that was enough for them to all rise up, as it were. But I don't know if the same thing will happen when it comes to like a value proposition thing. It's sort of hard to say. It would be very interesting to watch, and I don't think it's off the cards because of how consistently generous Star Rail has been with its player base compared to Genshin, and it's becoming more and more obvious by the day. Like it's getting it kind of comically conspicuous at this point, just how generous they really are. Um,
Yeah, outside of new content
almost,
updates, you don't really hear anything about Genshin anymore, but you're seeing more and more just casual posts about people playing Star Rail.
yeah.
And I actually think Genshin's gameplay loop is fine. I'm not as harsh on it as Vol is, but and like it better than
Well,
Star Rail.
I've never
But
had any, never had any conceptual complaints about the gameplay loop at all. My complaints are all based from what you say. It sounds like pretty much every single complaint that I have is either a matter of the numbers being tuned really badly for practical purposes, or the fact that they refuse to make any quality of life changes, even though they've already done them somewhere else.
yeah,
Like that those two things encompass like 98% of my complaints about the game.
yeah, and it's the reason I'm even though I'm not really attached to Star Rail right now and still giving it a shot, is just because Genshin has abused me basically, and the things that surround what is otherwise a really good gameplay loop are just so painful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the argument is always going to be, oh well, it's predatory because they want you to spend money to get out of it. So,
Yeah,
well, even if you do, even if you wail for the latest character, if you decide, oh, I really, really want new Geo Girl, what's her name? I can't remember. South of Seed, isn't it? If you really want her, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wail for her. Okay, let's wail for her. That doesn't stop you then having to farm up over the course of forever a whole pile of materials.
yeah, I'll
And
have.
something's going to have to fuel that. I'm astonished that you pushed through as hard as you did on Yaimiko.
Oh, that's because
Like
I just
that's
happen to have most of the crap for her already, except for the boss drop.
because if I tried to build a character in the speed that you built her, it would probably burn me out on the game, and I
No,
would just stop playing.
it's because I already had everything except for the boss drop. That was literally the last thing I needed. I just happened to have the everything else she needed.
How can any human have that many elemental gems?
Oh, those just come with the. Oh, so that's the thing. When you're doing all the weekly bosses as well, you're getting a whole bunch of random elemental gems. So my
Oh,
stock.
I can't possibly afford to do that because I don't have gear on. I have one geared character, just one.
Yeah.
Like, I have nothing but garbage. Like, the only time I ever got good relics was that one time where we just went monomaniacally farming for my Ningguang. That was the only time I got good relics. Every other relic I've got is complete shite. I have no good ones.
Yeah, I
My
have
character's a total mess. So I can't spend any resin on anything other than doing domains. Like, just can't afford it.
yeah, it's a mess. But I got a bunch of elemental gems through that, and more specifically, what you can do is just mash together and use the in the shop, the Paimon shop from the baby dust. You can buy that dust of Azoth, and you can convert a elemental gem into an elemental gem of any other type. So all the miscellaneous gems become the type whatever you need at the moment. And because you level characters so infrequently in this game, you'll have them just laying around bosses. Plus whatever boss you're killing, probably,
This is
unless your
gonna
Navia's boss drops the shards you need as well.
Nah, they wouldn't do a thing like that. They do split element bosses now.
Yeah. Why does Navia's boss not drop GM
Like,
crap?
and this is why I'm saying the problem is not the gameplay loop; it's the numbers. They have done everything they could to massage the numbers to be as inefficient as possible, and there's not really a good reason to do that because you're just frustrating your player base. It's like uh, parents that try and encourage their children into good behaviors, except that the way they do it is just by constantly deriding everything that they do to the point where it feels like they can't do anything right, and then the child just becomes rebellious and stops listening. Like that's the way they treat their player base. Every time somebody thinks they've got a good way of doing something, they'll just introduce something that completely shits on it. And it's all from a numbers perspective. Like, while I think that there are a shade too many angles that you have to approach a character in order to upgrade it compared to Star Rail, which I think is more balanced. Ultimately, the loop is not the problem. The problem is that they have made you sit in that loop, getting increasingly frustrated for 2 or 3 times the length of time it would take in Star Rail.
Yeah. And they're given the roster of 4-star characters you'll accrue over time in the game that I just have a pile. Most of my characters are sitting at level 40. They got leveled to level 40 to get the free pull from doing that, and they're just
I
rotting.
haven't done that because I don't have the books. There's nowhere near enough books for that.
And they're just
Like,
rotten.
if there are more books from chests, like in terms of sheer number, I might just have to increase my world level just to get more books because holy crap,
Yeah,
books are the limiting reagent in this game above everything else.
yeah. Books. Mora for me is the big one. I just never have enough to do everything I need to,
Well,
especially.
the thing is, I have plenty of Mora. Like, even though I've leveled a 5-star to 80 and a 5-star to 90 in the past week, I still have 4.5 million Mora. And the reason I have 4.5 million Mora is because I can't spend it because I have no books.
Yeah, they really want you to have dump that resin on freaking EXP nodes. I guess I don't know, or to really get
I
out there.
mean, I had to when I came back to the game. I had no choice
Yeah,
because I had no characters of a reasonable level, and I had just leveled up world level to the point where I couldn't survive. So I had to spend resin on books originally, and I managed to get over that hump because it was just a little bit of ground needed to cross before I could survive one hit from a Hilichurl. But yeah, like I said, problem is not with the loop, it's with the numbers. But because they seem to have this policy of what has been accepted is accepted, we need not consider it any further. Like, I don't think that they have truly reckoned with the concept of attrition because of COVID. Because their numbers got boosted artificially so high in such a short amount of time, they haven't truly reckoned with attrition. And, this is going to have a toxic knock on effect of sorts to Star Rail because most of what makes Star Rail a great value proposition is the existence of Genshin. If there is no Genshin to compare Star Rail to, then Star Rail ends up in Genshin's position. But Star Rail, like I said, is roughly twice as generous in every respect as Genshin Impact. So no matter what Star Rail does, Genshin will always be twice as bad.
yeah, and even as comparatively as good as Star Rail is, it's still most other mobile game companies for the games that get the big headlines seem to be adopting something similar to the Cygames model, like Blue Archive.
Well, they're drifting in that direction very, very slowly. The heavy hitters that are still coming out haven't done that. But I mean, if you want to look at let's say Wuthering Waves, right? Because everybody's talking non-stop about Waves on my timeline at the moment. It's very, very similar to Genshin. It's like Genshin if you then bolted an actual action combat system onto it instead of just a passable Breath of the Wild tier 1. If you actually put an action game on there and tuned it properly and had heaps of like really difficult things that set up your difficulties so it wasn't just a matter of relative statistics and health bars and damage, but actually the pace of combat goes up and up and up, and the move set goes larger and larger and larger as you increase difficulty. Like, they've clearly gone to a great deal of effort to make it a competent action game. But the framework in which it is built is lifted directly from Genshin, because Genshin sort of set the standard. But if you look at, say, their weapon banner looks and acts and is structured exactly the same way as Genshin Impact's, except you set your target and you just get it when you hit pity.
Yeah.
You just get it. You pull 80 times and you get the weapon you wanted. End of story. Like, the definitive confidence to pull on a banner that would give people is definitely going to drain some resources. People are definitely going to spend on that because they can know that in this fixed amount of time they're going to get what they want. And the pity is triple that for Genshin to get a weapon. If I want Yaimiko's signature weapon, I've got to pull again to pity to get the second fate point, and then again to pity to get Yaimiko's actual weapon, because I've never gotten anything that didn't go to pity, I don't think, because I've always sort of ended up excessively pulling on a banner until I ran out. I've always gone to pity before, and I've only won 2 50/50s ever.
Was Yaimiko at pity, or did you get her early?
It was pity. It was a pity. It was a 50/50. It was the first 50/50.
Okay.
But
Yeah. I've done pretty good at winning the 50/50s, but I've had to pull to.
Have you ever lost one?
I don't.
I've never heard you
think-
report to me that you've lost one.
Not since I came back, and I don't have very many limited characters, so I don't think so. But that's a sample size of like 3, because I've only pulled for like 3 characters.
But yeah, it's the standard that is being set currently is, even for the ones that are like, you, if you want to call them their Genshin clones, they're all still can see, oh well, obviously I have room to be more generous than that. The last thing I want is to be seen to be as predatory as Genshin, because that means that nobody will have any impulse to leave Genshin.
Yeah.
Like that, and that's the problem. The Genshin has set the bar so low that it's going to take a long time for people to move in the direction of being more like Blue Archive in the mainstream, because the bar has been set so low. You don't have to give a good deal to people if the biggest competitor is giving an absolutely shitty one and is still doing okay.
Yeah, and even before I was playing Pinecone, I was playing Cinderella Girls, another Cygames game, and they're just so generous with the amount of just free gems they give you just for playing the game. And the guaranteed spark is always there.
Yeah, the thing that I think the Genshin devs are missing is that there's a lot of money to be made on basically making pulling to be not really a big deal. It's, oh, well, this isn't really a consideration I have to fret too much about.
Yeah, because any game that uses the Cygames model, if I enjoy the game, I don't mind throwing a few bucks at it. And I'll do that repeatedly throughout the year if I really like it, like when I was actively playing Blue Archive, or I would have done it with Pinecone if it wasn't for Crunchyroll. Or I threw some bucks at Idolmaster, like just because that model is nice enough to to guarantee you what you want, and just put kind of a pseudo fixed cost on it if you don't quite have the time to grind it up. But they still give you the option to grind it up if you want to in the Cygames model, because it's not hard to accrue the amount of gems you need for a spark in those games, as long as you play and do your dailies every day, and occasionally bop whatever the equivalent of Grand Assault is that's up for the week. Do your clan battle or whatever in Pinecone. You're going to have the gems just laying around from the events, and from just progressing this whatever new story chapters get released or whatever. as long as you're on the ball with it, you'll pull literally whoever you want and have gems to spare.
Yeah,
But
and
and
I think that this is a different attitude. Like the attitude at work in Genshin is we need to skin the player for everything that we can. We need to basically blackmail them into spending money.
yeah,
Whereas by contrast, Blue Archive is like we want spending currency to be such a casual thing that they will think nothing of topping up just a little bit if they need to here and there. So we can, rather than having to get people to drop huge chunks of change on big packs all the time, just make the small expenditures trivial so that the barrier to entry is really low and people don't think anything of it.
yeah. And the other thing the side games model does is the first refresh of the day is really cheap. If you just want to play a little bit more, get a few more materials on something. So if you want to, it's not unreasonable to do the cheap refresh every day on if an event's going on that you really want to farm in those type
Yeah,
of
the
games.
only reason I don't is because I feel like my personal psychology militates against it because the something about gems feels like they're supposed to be permanent. You're supposed to hold on to them
Yeah,
until you've got a planned investment for them, and so spending them like you would daily currency feels kind of weird to me. So I tend to avoid doing it.
yeah. But in Genshin
Um,
and even in Star Rail by proxy, I guess the Hoyo idea of refreshes is so cancerous because of how much the refresh costs.
like you could convert that into dollars very easily, and it would be bonkers the outcome.
Yeah, like that is to keep it into in-game terms. Refreshing once for your first refresh, the cheapest one in Genshin is 60 primo gems. That is one major side quest or 12 common chests.
Yeah, that's not something that you can easily toss away, and you're not tossing it away to get anything definitive either.
No.
Like there's no go. That's not going to increment your pity on your relic farming. Like you're not going to be improving your rates of anything there. You're just going to be in strife if it doesn't go your way. There's just no reason to do it. And you know, when Sparkle came out, Star Rail just sort of casually gave everybody 10 fuels, which is the same as a fragile resin.
Hmm.
Like when was how often does Genshin just give out 10 fragile resin just like oh new characters out here's celebratory big pile of resin so that you can farm her up.
Yeah, that's the other thing with Genshin's resin system that really bugs me. Like on a day like today, when we're just playing Genshin doing the show, if we just had enough prime resin, fragile resin saved up throughout the week or throughout the weeks, when we just have a show going and we just want to go, beat up the robots to try and get some artifacts, the drop rate wouldn't hurt nearly as bad because we could just keep going on the days we actually have time.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's a particular way of playing that really seems like most developers don't comprehend. I mean, we saw this play out in a slightly different way with World of Warcraft, right? Remember that they made a big deal about wanting it to be accessible to people who play casually, but their assumption of casual means can play for 30 minutes every single day without fail.
yeah, no, that
The
that
assumption of the real casual, the real way of playing casual, played by gamers, people who like to play gaming as a major hobby, is that they can't play it all during the week. They save up their time and then they binge in the weekend. Like that's just how it works in the real world. And it seems that no developer comprehends this even slightly.
Yeah, and even then, if you're banking on them to spend their little bits of free time all throughout the week, there are other video games that exist. Like I had a little bit of free time this week, and I had after work. It wasn't much, but I had some, and I dumped it into Relink. I'm not going to get on a game that asks me to make incremental progress. Probably, like World of Warcraft. I'm not going to be as incentivized to do that. It's like there are other games I want to play that give me more bang for my buck in this limited bit of time I've got to spend.
Yeah.
And
So basically, this is a protracted whinge about the fact that nothing is the way we want it in the world of gacha. But the thing is that the gacha world is doing perfectly well, regardless of what we think of it. So they've got no good reason to give a damn.
I just want Pinecone
Um,
back. That's all I want.
yeah, but
It's
so
not
never
gonna
forget what
happen.
they took to us. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, and it's not going to happen, and not for lack of profitability, because if probably if Pinecone was run by a competent company, it would have been fine. But the the fundamental situation is that people are still going to whale because I keep seeing people posting online about Genshin saying like, "Oh, I've got all but 2 characters," or "Oh, I've got this 5-star at C4. I'm hoping to get them to C5," and things like that. It's like there's a lot of moolah just being sort of chucked around, and there's not really any way to get away from that. That's the reality that we live in, is that people will throw huge amounts of money at it, even if it's a bad value proposition.
Yeah. I have hit.
Like that.
Oh, go ahead.
No, no, go on.
Oh, I'm sitting here thinking about those whales. I have hit the stop point in terms of easily accessible chests. And aside from side quests and the areas I still have on the spoiler list, which are not very big, they're showing completion of 70% plus. I'm pretty much at the easily accessible primo stop point. And I have enough gems in the bank for one more 50-50 plus 2 rolls, plus 2 10 pulls. That's it.
Yeah, like as a as sort of like if you try to analyze this from like a market perspective, this doesn't really seem like a healthy market. Like, because if you need to have your Genshin World GDP go up, you need that currency to circulate and to keep circulating. If you if you sort of acclimate people to spending is impossible, then for some people that will mean, okay, I'll get out my wallet. For a lot of people that will mean, okay, so I'll just become used to the idea that I can't acquire anything that I want, and I'll just work with what I've got to hand.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the reason that I'm an Ingwang main, is because when I started playing Genshin, I had $0 and 0 cents to work with, and I since I've got chronically bad luck,
You got Klee.
I was never going to, huh?
You got Klee.
I got Klee, yes, the worst 5-star in the game that is not called Dare. Um, the because I have chronically bad luck, I was never going to be able to get one of the sort of the headliners that allows you to build teams around them. So I improvised. I improvised and used a adequate driver that's a character that I like, and I built around them and acclimated myself to the idea of not being able to get the things that I wanted. And that so I've got Ningguang on my team, who's one of the earlier 4-stars I pulled, and I've got her to C6. I've got Yunjin on my team, who is free. I've got Fischl on my team, who is free. And I've got Barbara on my team, who is free. And that's how my team is built, because I'm acclimated to not spending money. Now, how are they going to make money out of me like that? If I've spent plenty of money on FGO because, within reason you can get what you want there, especially now that there's pity. And most of the money that I spent on FGO has been on GSSRs. And probably about 50% of GSSRs, I've got someone that I really, really got a lot of use out of. And the other 50%, I have over time found uses for them. Even if they weren't really ones that I was that interested in, they have paid off eventually. And I was a regular spender back when I was really, really actively playing FGO. I was a regular spender on the GSSR. Like I would get GSSR every time it was up,
Yeah.
without exception. So they were making their money out of me because they had promised me something. It's like, well, our rates are shite, our banners are shite, but we are definitely going to give you a 5-star if you spend money on this. And so I got my 5 stars. Yep, fine, okay. They found their way to get money out of me on the regular, and that was by having GSR events. Genshin has implemented no such tactic. There's no reason for them to give me money. In fact, they have taught me how to play without ever spending money. Like, I still am inclined toward it, but I don't need to. No, because like when I sit down to play, I don't actually use anything that costs money. This
Yeah.
is the way it is. So, like, this is a poor decision on their point as far as a consumer like me is concerned.
The
In
problem is
exchange
consume.
for getting that whale money, how many people who would have been dolphins weren't dolphins?
Yeah, or even just carp that buy like maybe one or two things and call it there.
But I mean,
But
I see like people post this account is worth $35,000 or whatever, calculating how many pities it would take to get everything on their account. And like, well, that's an egregious amount of money that one person has spent on the game. But how many dolphins is $35,000? It's not really that much because a dolphin amount is not like dolphin amount maybe is spending like say $500 over your lifespan playing in the game. Let's say $500 to $1,000 if you play for like 5 years or something like that.
hmm
Let's say that's not hard to actually accomplish if you aren't punishing your players for taking the risk,
yeah,
because it is a risk. Even if they don't actually, actuarially assess it as a risk, it is definitely a risk. So I think that there is a tactic for them that will make more money than just the whale approach. Because if you've got a bunch of people spending $500 over the course of their time in the game, and you are just trying to convert to $35,000, like for every one $35,000, you only need to pick up 70 people who are interested enough to spend like video game money, like $100 a year video game money on your game.
like normal people
That's
money for whatever their main game is.
Yeah, like to get those people is not that hard. And they will add more longevity to your game than a whale, because most of those big whales, a couple of them are pathological gamblers, but a lot of them these days are streaming people who will move on if your game ceases to be the big thing that people are watching. Like, there's a lot of risks with that plan, and it makes a lot more sense to me to go to a long-term stable approach instead.
Yeah,
I mean, it would be convenient for me personally, so my point of view on it is biased, because I don't mind spending a small chunk of change on a game that I feel is going to give me some value for it. But I don't know whether Genshin is there or not. Like, I might be inclined to, so they've announced the Chronicle banner, right? Which is when something has had when the Limited has had 3 banners in the past, they'll get added to the potential list for Chronicle characters. And the Chronicle characters will be on a rotating banner by zone or by patch, depending on how you envision it. They haven't really made a firm decision, I don't feel. Um, and that will allow you to set a character as a target for pity. So that helps people like me who were out of the game for a long time and really need Zhongli in order to make their team work, and can't get him because the roster's inflating, so they need to be able to target something and get it for reals. Now, this is of no use whatsoever to Wales because they've already got all these characters, and they see this as a bait banner, and they curse and swear about it the on the internet because they would have rather just got 100 Primogems than have this banner exist at all. Well, that's fine for them. It's not fine for the dolphin portion of the player base who just can't get every character even if they really need them, because sometimes the release order is not convenient. Sometimes the rerun banners are not convenient. Like, there's a lot of marketing strategy goes into these types of things. Like Sparkle in Honkai Star Rail, this is a very clear example, so it's a good one to state, has come out on the back of number one Ruanmei not too long ago, who is a very strong, quite meta capable support who functions very strongly in one particular generalized type of gameplay. Sparkle is also a meta support who uses a totally different type of currently very popular hypercarry gameplay. And because she's an enabler for a particular archetype of team building, there is a very strong impetus to pull for her, even if you don't need her right now, because she's an enabler of a particular type of team. Because you've got Sparkle, you can build particular teams that you can't build very easily without Sparkle. Like, you could sort of ape it a little bit if you have Hanya, who, aside from having an unbelievable ASMR voice in JP, is kind of unremarkable in a lot of other ways. But she screams meta. Her design screams meta.
yeah,
Releasing her now is an incredibly good move on their part, because what is coming immediately after her is Acheron, And Acheron is the Star Rail World Shards version of Raiden Shogun. Like, she is that woman. She's the electric woman with the katana who has long purple hair and is sort of like, has the mommy bod type of thing.
Uh, we got more lightning boobs.
Yeah, more lightning boobs. Like lightning is overblessed with these characters right now in Star Rail, but like, and what's more, she's got really, really powerful. From what the leaks of her kit, she's got really powerful abilities, such as being able to one-shot mobs in the overworld without having to go into battle, using talent points, and still get the loot for them, which is going to be enabling unspeakably efficient farming of low rarity mats to the point where people with Acheron will be able to trivialize it. And she doesn't use a conventional energy system for her ult. So basically, she is also going to define a meta, though how that meta will look is not clear. Because she's so radically different, she will define a new team archetype, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly supplanting Jingyu, possibly not, since Imbibita Lunai has sort of not displaced, but pulled up alongside the Jingyu meta, and since the general has been rerun again, apparently the presence of Sparkle has uplifted his meta potential to about S tier from about B tier. But basically, what we've got is two incredibly high value meta banners back to back that are pointed in opposite directions. This means that they have, wargamed out their marketing to bleed people of the maximum amount of in game currency that they can.
Yeah.
This type of thing is incredibly profitable on the whales and completely destroys casuals who don't spend much money or spend no money. Which means that a banner like the Chronicle banner is actually really useful for those people. It's actually really helpful because sometimes you need to build up the fundamentals of your team, not just keep up with the flavor of the month. So it doesn't really make a lot of like broader view sense for people to be ragging on the banner so much as the way they have. But this new Chronicle banner seems like it's sort of like a keeping up with the Joneses type of way of trying to at least try and ape the appearance of Star Rail's generosity without actually having to, because the pity still functionally works the same. It just provides a different service to a different portion of the player base. But it does mean that they have cottoned on that maybe this part of the player base exists that actually does want to roll for a character that's 3 years old just because they like it or because it's useful for their roster and they don't have them.
Yeah, especially
So
because Genshin's had such a long time to build up a roster of characters. The potential of any one of those characters being a character that somebody wants for a particular build is just high. And with only two banners at a time for two characters, it's just going to take too long for the banners to cycle. Like, I had to pass on Raiden Shogun to get Nahida.
yeah, I passed on Raiden Shogun because I preferred Yaimiko for the Ningguang team specifically. Like, you could use Raiden Shogun in a Ningguang team, but it just wouldn't make a lot of sense to do so. It's not really perfectly suited for that. And Raiden Shogun is definitely a linchpin of a lot of teams. Like, she's basically, design-wise, she is the Kafka of Genshin Impact. The lightning mommy that happens to work in virtually every team because she just provides a type of support that never ages, that just can find a place in every meta.
Yep,
So she's definitely a valuable character, but I had another particular character in my sights, and so I had to burn all of my resources servicing that.
yeah. Especially when what you and me want is just electro application. We don't really care about her other effects.
Yeah, like, I mean, as a general policy, I love Catalyst characters. Like, they're my favorite to play. I always play Catalyst characters if I can. I just like them better. So I'm not averse to building eventually a jank on-field DPS team for Yaimiko just for the fun of it in the future. So that's part of why I was perfectly happy to roll for Yaimiko and why I tried at least to get a signature weapon. But yeah, the basically Raiden Shogun, while of objective value, doesn't really fit into my pulling plans at present because my resources are so scarce. But I can't help but note that never happened to me in FGO. In FGO, I have all of the characters that I really want. There are no characters I really want that I really don't have. And I also have all of the metas, which means that you can do it because like the the rates in Genshin are better than the ones in FGO under most circumstances, or at least historically they were.
It's
I
just
don't know if it's quite the case anymore because the pity works more robustly in FGO now, so it might be balancing out. But that means that there is a model where you can bleed me of cash, and you can give me everything I want, so that I can build all of the teams that I want to build without any issue, and everybody gets to go home happy. So that, as far as I'm concerned, that's just a clear indicator to me that the Hoyo are doing something wrong.
yeah, I really think it has to do, as far as their gacha is concerned. 90% of the problem is the currency income rate. It's just too low for Genshin. Like,
Yeah, and people seem to be satisfied with it, and they don't want to go back on it. And it doesn't seem to have hurt profitability at all for Star Rail that they're giving out literally double the currency.
yeah,
Like, I feel every time I turn around, I'm picking up another 120 Stellar Jade.
yeah, but you get half of that for a completed full big quest in Genshin, and uh, while there are more chests to open in Genshin to supplement stuff, uh, that doesn't quite make up for it. Never mind that the events will still keep that rate of Primogen payout.
Yeah, it seems like they've made bad decisions, and whether they are unwilling or not allowed by their overlords to go back on them, I don't know. But it seems like there are like obvious paths that they could opt to take. I mean, I would like to use that Chronicle banner, and if Zhongli comes up on it, and like I expect it'll be a cycle after the Fontaine one that they're going to put up first, and when 4.5 drops, so probably it'll be the 4.6 banner. So it's a ways out. I don't know, since I've got a lot of story ahead of me, I might be able to build up ahead of Steam with Prima Gems in advance. But I would probably be more tempted to wail for Zhongli on a banner like that, simply because they have laid out a clear proposition of this is what we're offering and this is how you get it,
Yeah,
as opposed to say their approach to weapon banners, which is like, well, if you spend triple the amount that it looks like you have to spend, then maybe you'll get it.
yeah, their weapon banners are mean.
When it comes to signature weapons, like I think that it's really kind of predatory because they are worth too much, in my opinion. Like
Um,
the your Navius performance with and without, like put your Wolf's Gravestone on
oh, I lose
and
a
try and use your
solid.
Navia.
I lose a solid
Like
third of my damage.
that I think that those weapons are worth too much. They're worth too much in terms of power.
Yeah, just
They exist purely in order to create a whale overclass of people who are the people who can do lots of damage. This is why I think that this is about streaming, right? Because the people who do the giant numbers are usually doing it for content creation.
yeah, just to put it in context, Wolf's Greatsword, fairly okay. 608 attack, 50% base attack. I have it at R2 because I pulled two of these stupid things. 25% permanent extra attack on top of that, so functionally plus 75% attack. And on hit, when you smack a low health opponent, you get a 50% attack buff. So just raw big base number boost. Navia Verdict, instead of 608, we have 674 base attack, almost 25% crit, and a flat extra 10%, 20% attack boost, just as passive number one on the refinement rank area. And when party members obtain elemental shards from crystallized reactions, you get one rose, and you can hold up to two of them. And every single rose, and for each rose you have, your elemental skill is increased by 18% per stack. That
Right.
is a huge number.
So in so in the first place, basically, signature weapons are bonkers for the character that they are designed for. Secondarily, and I don't know how many people this affects, but it certainly affects me. Like I seriously gave genuine thought to not using my Skyward Atlas on Ningguang, and the main reason I did that was because I felt like Solar Pearl fits her better aesthetically. and that was the only reason. The purpose of signature weapons is, in visual terms, is to give an aesthetic fit to the character. And I think that there are a lot of people who would buy into that if the price to buy into that was not so absurd.
Yeah.
Like the thing that I resent the most about playing exclusively 4-star characters is that so few of them have a signature weapon. Like there are some that you can argue Solar Pearl is a signature weapon for Ningguang because it looks like it fits her color palette and it appears as her weapon in a certain amount of promotional art. So
Mm.
it's kind of easy to argue. You can argue something like Serpent Spine as a characteristic weapon for Baidu because it sort of fits with her piety aesthetic and it's a lightning weapon which is designed for her type of play, etc., etc. So it fits her aesthetic better than it fits most other characters that can use it or that favor it. So there are some that you can make arguments for, but the fact that there's no clean aesthetic fit does bother me. And the idea of using like Solar Pearl on Yaimiko, which is a total clash in color palette, not really a great fit in terms of design, although if you play Yaimiko on field, it works all right. Generally speaking, it just looks a bit jank. And that was a non-negligible part, probably about at least 50% of my desire to get Kagura's Verity that fell through because I didn't wail on it, was simply for aesthetic purposes.
Yeah. Navi.
And
Okay.
if it was a 50-50 instead of the fate system which requires 3 pulls to pity to guarantee the weapon, I might have wailed on it. I might have given in to temptation and wailed on it. But the fact that it was 3 stopped me, so they didn't get any money.
Yeah, your asking price is just too high. And what's more with aesthetics, Navia's axe, her animations are clearly designed around her having a halberd or an axe.
Does it look jank if you give her a sword?
I mean, it works, but it just fits better with the axe.
Well, because the center of gravity of an axe is in a different location.
Yeah, and it's like she's clearly swinging something that has most of its mass at its head, and the swing arcs are perfectly in line with Verdict's blade. Well, aside from when she kicks it, there ain't much you can do to make that animation uh special, but it's already special.
But yeah, so it just seems like they've got all of these sort of sunk cost decisions that they could easily go back on, and they just have decided not to because somebody has done a calculation saying that we reckon we'll make more money this way. But it doesn't seem to really like it shows good market nous in a lot of ways, like the situations I explained for like the order of banner deployment that is being used in Star Rail to tempt people to bleed out the maximum amount of whatchamacallit, of resources before a really key banner. Like the thing is that Sparkle by herself, while she enables absolute cancer from Shinsei and from Imbibita Luna, she's really not that splashy in the current environment, other than for those 2 particular hypercarry teams. And those are cool teams that they make great content, which is good promotional content for them. But Sparkle is still an unmeasured quantity because you need to determine the value of a meta support long term, right? If Hoyo decide to not support that type of play and they never release another character that like eats skill points for breakfast, then the value of Sparkle will drop like a stone, and everybody will go back to using Bronya for her advance, her position advance. So that's she's tempting for her potential rather than being a big splashy character, and they follow her up with an obviously splashy character who everybody has been introduced to at length in the story, and lots of people have done a ton of art of her and everything. Like she's already super popular long before her abilities are even announced, type of thing. Like so they've got the market now, so they understand how that type of thinking works. But when it comes to making the decision, do I or do I not spend real world money on this, either they are working from a different culture's attitude to this, or they are not actually understanding it at all.
Yeah,
Because maybe everything that I have said just does not apply in China.
yeah. This is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the third option here is we are just underestimating the amount of whales there are actually are and how much they're spending on this game.
'Cause what I've heard a lot about the Chinese market is that in the Chinese way of looking at playing video, having money is a type of player skill. Like, what you go and do at your day job to get your money to whale on the gacha is part of player skill, much in the way luck is part of player skill. Like, there's nothing you can do to improve your luck. If the fortunes go your way, then they go your way. If they don't go your way, then they don't go your way. And you can't really perturb it in any meaningful way yourself. But it's still, there's that saying that luck is a part of skill, right? Because a person who, on average, gets the better of the fates more often than not does better. And this is a reality, whether you like it or not, whether you think it's fair or not. That is just the way the world works. In the Chinese psychology, money is like that. If you have worked hard to get a good job and you get lots of money and you spend that on your video game and it gives you an advantage, they see that as game skill. So, well, you did a thing in real life and that made you able to play the game better. That's perfectly fair. So, to them, how much money you have to spend on a game is functionally just a difficulty setting.
Yeah, I really think the number of people that wail for the game, especially because it got such the huge boost during Coof, and so many people that didn't usually play these type of long form games picked up Genshin as their first one. The that
Picked up
will
a gambling addiction.
yeah, functionally yes.
I
They
mean, what else are you going to spend your money on during COVID? You can't go out to a bar or anything like that normies do. I presume normies still do that. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't have coworkers to take to a bar, so
All of my coworkers are family people, so
yeah, it's I really think that getting baby's first gambling, baby's first casino into the hands of a lot of people, just got them hooked on it. Like much in the same way we used to rag on people not being able to quit WoW because they're just so used to it, and how we had to fight that same thing leaving WoW. Now that they're in Genshin, they can't leave.
yeah, and they complain about it non-stop, like most of the WoW community as well. Like if you look at what the Genshin community is like number one, they're incredibly cancerous. Number two, if you look at like the topics of debate, none of them are happy with any aspect of the game. If you just look at it like that, if you just look at it on the face of things, they
Yeah,
all complaining non-stop about virtually every conceivable aspect of it. Like the WoW player base, many of whom are completely shackled to that machine.
yeah. It's like they just can't pull the IV out.
I mean, I don't have a problem with Genshin because I've dropped it entirely before. And what actually what the reason why I dragged us all back in here was simply because I saw the trailers for Fontaine and people were saying that the story was entertaining. And I remembered that the Mondstadt story was not that great. And I was like, well, how have they advanced? And so that was why I started suggesting that maybe we should see if anything has changed in Genshin, and we all ended up shackled back to this gacha machine again. But
I can
we've left it
feel.
before, so we can leave it again if we need to.
Yeah, I have never in this little return to play felt the shackles were particularly tight. They like I can easily slip them off.
Yeah, well, I
It's
mean, the thing is, I simultaneously started playing Star Rail, so neither one can really hold me. Like, I like the aesthetics of Star Rail better. Like that, I think that there's a certain prettiness to it that I like, and there's a certain amount of cleanness to it that I like, and it doesn't it doesn't have the same level of grime that Genshin does, simply because they've learned a lot of lessons about how not to be that predatory. They choose their battles instead
yeah,
instead of trying to ream you along every axis.
yeah, and they are right. The story for Fontaine and Sumeru is really good. You just have to get through Inazuma in the hole.
Ugh.
Inazuma,
I
you're
sort of assumed that it would be okay. Like I said, I came back for Fontaine because people were talking about it online, and I was like, well, surely it will just be a gentle upslope to the quality of Fontaine, right?
no, it is going to be a massive spike. Like they fired the whole writing team and replaced them at Sumeru.
But yeah, I haven't found anything like particularly inspiring or like magically compelling about the writing in Star Rail, but I like it. Like, I have liked it the entire time, and it keeps me engaged, and it keeps me guessing, it keeps me intrigued. Like, the addition of sparkle to the plot throws everything in a new light because, number one, nobody knows what her agenda is, if she even has one, since she's a servant of Aha, and servants of Aha, their main objective in life is to spend all of their energy shitposting IRL. She is a it's implied quite heavily that she, in her life before becoming a devotee of Aha, was a prodigy child actress, and she can create perfect illusions to disguise herself as other people. Meaning that literally anybody you meet on Penacony could have just been Sparkle. And you don't know unless you've got an alibi for Sparkle at that time. Which throws the entire plot in a totally different light.
Yeah. I have not spoken much about the Fontaine story in Genshin because it relies very heavily on mystery and figuring out the operations of Fontaine in a almost metaphysical sense of the way the world works. And so telling you anything about it is spoilers.
Yeah, I think that part of that is probably going to be dealt with in Penacony and Star Rail because the Hoyoverse thing seems to be that there are while there are big differences between the different universes, there seem to be certain fundamental rules that are shared between them, sort of like in Clamp's universe, which has sort of cardinal laws that can't be superseded. But all of Penacony is based on dreams. Everything about it is an analysis of dreams. And there's an entire sort of faction whose all their special skills, and they're the followers of Fuli, the Remembrance, all of their special skills are focused around manipulation of memories and dreams. And they say pretty. I'm not sure how explicit they are about it, but it's sort of heavily implied that the way that dreams are framed to you initially is not really the way dreams really are.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten far enough through the story in Genshin to really investigate where the intersections might be. And Penacony is still like they have finished chapter 1 of Penacony, and everything is now a question. No one knows where the battle lines are. Nobody knows who is alive and who is dead, who is real, who is dreaming. I don't trust anything that has happened so far because by the time when I finished the story up to the end of 2.0, I realized that in retrospect, I hadn't spent any time with the other members of the Astral Express, really.
Yeah, you fell asleep on the bus.
Like, well, I mean, you fall asleep on the bus on the way, and that calls certain things into questions because you never witnessed your entry to Penacony in a direct sense. But also, when you are actively playing, and I mean that both in the game sense and the what you are doing while you are on holiday on Penacony, while you are playing, you are never with the people that you think you're with. Like, you never run into them, ever, when you're doing stuff. When all of the dramatic stuff is happening, when all of the plot twists are happening, none of your comrades are there to witness them. And I didn't realize till I got to the end of 2.0 that this was the case. Because on Girillo 6, you're with your buddies all the time, right? Don
Mhm.
Hung and March 7th are with you all the time. When you are exploring the Lofu, Welt and March 7th are with you all the time. On Penacony, you all arrive on Penacony together, and then you never see them again, except when you're having powwows about the current state of affairs in the like the hotel lobby. So it's very there's lots of things about the presentation of the story that leave lots of wiggle room, and I'm really curious just to see whether they exploit those and what they do with them because there's a lot of room in there. They aren't the most masterful writers in the world. They're not like some of the sort of high points of Final Fantasy XIV. They don't reach that caliber, but they still have managed to really keep me interested. Certainly more than Inazuma has.
Well, it actually has a story. Anything's a step up from that in Inazuma.
But yeah, believe it or not, this is not a Hoyoverse podcast, and that was the end of my week.
Yeah, we've been going on for about an hour and a half, at least. Uh, Try 2 hours.
Did you ever break queued up because my throat is a bit?
I can do one.
And
Hopefully, it doesn't break. I'm still running a pretty janky system here. But here's some music, folks. We'll be right back. And we're back.
Yes, indeed. The one last well banged drum that I want to bang on a little bit more is the localization one, though. Why in the hell did they name her Sparkle? So they do this weird thing that I've never seen done any time in recent history in a localization, in the Star Rail localization, and that is to localize names. I thought this went out of fashion a long time ago. Now what I don't know what the I don't know what the practice is or what the original script says as far as the Chinese version of the story is concerned. But they keep doing this thing. Like the first example most people will run into is Mitsuki. That is to say March 7th. Now, naming a person after an important date is actually common practice in Japan. Like a person being named. There's lots of well-known characters even in anime that have names that are literally a date. That's not unusual because you can have a reading that is a name and the meaning be whatever the characters are. So it can be written as a date, read as name. And Mitsuki is March 7th. That's just the way it is. But in English, she's just named March 7th because it's just a weird name. And it sticks out as a weird name because people aren't named after dates in English naming conventions. But they gave her that name anyway instead of just keeping her name as being Mitsuki. They could have, done that weird little furigana thing they do sometimes to clarify if they really wanted to. But at least that way she would have had a name as opposed to a date.
Yeah,
And
even
they keep doing this everywhere. This is not just her either. Firefly. Nobody's named Firefly IRL in English. Her name is Hotaru, which is a normal Japanese name. And in the case of Sparkle, her name is Hanabi in the Japanese, which is a normal name. It is a homophone for fireworks, yes, but her name is Hanabi, not Sparkle. Good grief! Why? What is the point of this?
I do not know. They've made a
This is
whole
like Ash, Brock, and Misty all over again.
yeah, they're jelly donuts.
Yeah. Like at least Misty made sense because Misty at least sounds like it could conceivably be somebody's name, even if it's not a very normal one. Because Kasumi does mean mist, but I don't know. It just seems very, a very odd decision to name a character Sparkle and then expect people to take it seriously.
It is a funny name, I guess, but it's funny because it's ridiculous. Oh, there's a big gold slime over there. No, come back, King Gold Slime. Yeah, I don't really know what to tell you with the localization Star Rail. I feel I beat that horse pretty hard last week.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, did you see that tweet I linked to you?
I probably did, but you'll have to
It
remind me.
was it was it was it was from
Oh,
Emily's Twitter, and they're having a little powwow with all of the what should we call it? It's the Star Rail voice actors, a whole bunch of Star Rail voice actors all playing video games together because they're not voice actors; they're just e-celebs.
yeah. Like people that take the voice acting job seriously will, if they get together to do something like that, that's an event. That's not a. That's not
But
something you just do.
you can tell that this isn't about the voice acting for them. Their voice acting is a means of self promotion. It's not about the character. It's not about their acting career. It's about self promotion. Like,
Yeah,
oh, I can now get more exposure because I voiced a character in this popular game, and now I can use this to build my views.
yeah. It's like, oh, I just got. I just wanted this on my IMDb page or whatever. Kill the slime? Can't tell with the sound off. Oh, now we did. DLC because we won't have a break. So yeah, uh, it's a mess with Star Rail. I'm really having trouble even considering going into the game until I really stop and rewatch the cutscenes and try to reattach to it. Just that's a first impression you can't get back with me.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's I never had to suffer that because I foresaw it. I already didn't trust the English dubbing industry to be able to do a decent job, and you decided to gamble on it.
I mean, when they're fine, if they're at least fine, it's okay. I don't have to pay as much attention to the language aspect of what's being presented to me in the story. And
Well,
sometimes, and
I
I'll,
think
I'll I'll tell you the real reason that it gets that I don't put in the forefront of my brain even, but I miss it when I turn the Japanese on. I have it's not exactly a guilty pleasure, but I enjoy the big stupid hammy attack callouts in English.
because they sound so wrong.
They sound so dumb that I just love them. Like this is why I'll play every Trails or Tales game in English. Is so when I do my Mystic Art, I can hear Malik go, "Glorious celestial thundering light of cyclonic butchery."
Is that meant to sound as dorky as it does?
Yes, that Mystic Art is in particular meant to sound really dumb even in Japanese. But
But it's I think that you will need to going forward expect more of this though.
yeah, I think it's as streamers become more acceptable as voice actor replacements in the interim here of this of just the what you call it being a pain in the butt, the localization industry in general. It's going to be a shoe, and any
'Cause
game can just
this is going to be like the Blizzard scenario, right? Where people will work for Blizzard for a song because their dream is to work for Blizzard.
mm-hmm.
And what's more for streamers, it's sort of there's a situation of mutual benefit, right?
Yeah, they get an
Because
IMDb
they
credit.
get promoted as well.
Yeah, and that's going to drive more people to come look at them.
Yeah, so I am expecting the quality of voice acting generally to drop like a stone on one hand, and like I mean, basically there's going to be two options going forward, right? There's going to be the voice acting quality goes down because they're trying to use particular names for it. We're just moving from the realm of using Hollywood names to using streamer names, or they'll replace them with AI. Like I think that at least in the Western market, we're looking at a situation where good voice acting may literally become a thing of the past.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I really enjoy a good dub if it does it right. It's got good actors, but it's just I've known it's coming, but Star Rail was just the first time it just really hit me across the head with the streams. So yeah. All right. You got anything else on your week before I jump into
It's,
mine? Mine is
it's
one thing.
I was just annoyed at like why would you name a character Sparkle? So I had to whinge about it.
Yeah. So all right. How hard does it break this guy's horn? Probably pretty. Yeah, he's got a tough horn. You're gonna watch me do buzzsaws for a while. So yeah. All right. I guess we'll jump into my week then and start covering that. My week consisted of one game for my leisure time that was not just doing the occasional bit of dailies in Genshin. Uh, that's really all I've done with Genshin this week. It since I finished the main story, I've been just trying to unlock the remaining character stories by doing dailies, and once I get those done, all that'll be left after that is side quests that I really want to do, and then it'll be just playing on the weekends when people are on that I can actually play with, and playing playing the side quests that I haven't done yet. Because I was mostly coming back to see the story and to do the exploration, but while I went pretty hard on that, I've kind of run out of big zones now. I do have some cleanup still to do. There's if I really want to, there's quite a bit of time out there where I can. Lancelot, how did you get? How did this happen, my team? My buddies, my pals. Hang on. You're watching the thing I spent the rest of the week doing. But the oh, what was I going to say? Right. Unless unless new zones literally come out of the ether, uh, there just ain't gonna. There's a finite amount of stuff you can explore in an exploration game, and eventually that means you will need to take a break until new stuff comes out. And
Well, they've already started the hype cycle for 4.5.
yeah, they have. Um, so and they are pretty consistent about their releases for new patch content with their events. Um, but not every single one of them is a Chinyu Vale with a full explorable zone, and at most they usually have.
Nobody's got the development chops to manage that.
Yeah, that would be insane, and I don't expect it of them. But EO, why are you doing this now? EO, why do you betray me? Okay, I guess we're doing it now. But yeah, so I I have instead spent my little bit of free time this week going through the rest of or starting the post game and relink. Hey, we actually broke the horn. So yeah, relink. I mentioned last week it has a very Monster Hunter esque feel. With you select a mission and you go fight the boss, except you don't hunt the monster; it's just there in the arena and you go kill it. And this is fine. It's a very simple gameplay loop. It's not. It's not trying to blow your socks off with its gameplay loop here. It's just trying to be a fun action game in the Grand Blue setting, and that's fine. I did finish the post game story chapter, which involves a character unique to this game that isn't normally in the Grand Blues. So his story was okay. Like the rest of this game, it's okay. It's not gonna knock your socks off. It's a Grand Blue story, but yeah, I enjoyed it. Oh, we're all level sync down. That's why he's hitting way harder than normal. I forgot this is a quick quest. So yeah, I've spent a bit of time messing with the post game systems to get my characters up to snuff for post game stuff, or more specifically, to get Charlotta up to snuff, because she's the only character I have leveled. Because I,
Forever pure.
I don't know anything about the actual story of Charlotta, other than she's a knight that is trying to be this pure little ray of sunshine amongst the world. But she says "forever pure, forever righteous" in whatever that game is, versus Rising, and that's all I need. And because it sounds like "forever pure, forever racist," I actually have that title equipped in this game for completing her first character story episodes. Run out of potions if you dudes can't kill this dragon fast enough. So yeah, the first character I unlocked was Narmaya. Narmaya is an interesting character in the way they interpret her kit. She has very long cooldowns on all of her skills, but they're all very powerful. Or rather, they can be powerful. If you complete a combo and switch to her other stance at the end of the combo to do a big finisher, you'll gain a butterfly. And the more butterflies you have, you can hold up to 5, the more powerful her special skills are. So yeah, it's real interesting to have to play her. She's fun, but she's not exactly what I would call groundbreaking. Charlotta is probably the easiest action game character to play in the world, as you saw me doing my main DPS rotation when you have an enemy in a down state, and that is you mash the X button. It's very hard, very very thorough gameplay there. You put the defense down buff on the boss, you go invulnerable, and you mash the X button. That is literally all you do. So she has not been the most engaging character to play in the world, but the setup and chaotic nature of the fights in this game that are more focused around avoiding enemy attacks, I don't mind my offense being a little bit curtailed on the character I happen to pick. And there are other characters I'm looking at, like Lancelot, and I can always go back to Narmaya. Io looks fun. I've got her at least leveled up, although she isn't. She is not anywhere close to geared up. She does not have the right sigils equipped to be a functional character.
Right.
And a bunch of
What
others.
does your attack matter if you're going to solve the problem by summoning Bahamut anyway?
Well, in quest mode, you can't just summon Bahamut. I am out of potions. Team, please don't die. So yeah. I did not expect to get the dragon in the green dragon in Quick Quest. This is one of the the harder quests I have available right now. And in Quick Quest, it just gives you a random quest of ones that you have access to, and it's they're meant to be done in an open party with people on the internet, and
Ugh.
they scale you down to a level appropriate for the quest. So all your gear doesn't make a lick of difference. I am invincible, forever pure, forever racist. No, we're not racist enough. There we go. Link attacks give me full juice to just go ham on his toes. So yeah, uh, you do playing with people in this game is surprisingly not very painful. I expected it to be a lot more so, but it just hasn't been for some reason. Like you just queue up for a quick quest and you go join somebody's game and you do the quest and then you immediately leave. Most of them have no communication in them, and you'll usually see somebody like a Rackham that has overbuilt their character because the one guy that plays this game and tries too hard plays Rackham and seems to be playing all the time. And if you're
So there's a high chance that you'll end up in his game if you're doing
yeah,
the multiplayer.
because most people that are playing with their friends or playing alone. So the online isn't exactly thumping. But if you want the bonus rewards for it every day, you've got to do quick play, and you'll see him just destroy whatever you're killing, even level synced. And you're like, man, I ain't got the time to grind a character that high. How much did you upgrade your weapon? Because they do give you a lot of avenues for just
He just really likes Rackham.
yeah. Well, Rackman's probably the most efficient if you're in gamer mode because he's the ranged DPS character that can move quick. So if you're all in on the farming, Rackham's probably your go-to. But he's a Nicky boy, and he's Rackham. Rackham's kind of boring. He's not even a dork. He's just boring. But he is the helmsman, so he flies your ship. So I guess they had to include him in the game.
The one-eye guy.
No, that's Wigan.
I can't remember most of the characters. I'm just not that well acquainted with Grand Blue.
Yeah, Wigan's the X-Merc.
I just why could they not have made a Pinecone one instead?
Yeah, Pinecone just doesn't get very much love probably because it has no international presence anymore.
Wonder why that is.
But yeah, I am enjoying my time playing the game. I don't mind doing a few missions after work. They're usually fairly relaxed. Usually you don't get the Wind Dragon and try and do it solo like I just did. But and you can just get on and just do a few missions and have fun with it. There's a lot of avenues for progressing your characters. You can get mastery points that drop from quests. They're not just awarded for quest rewards and leveling up to get permanent passive upgrades on your characters of just passive stats you can accrue. You can level up their weapons, and their weapon type, if it's the Ascension weapon, can be further upgraded at Chiricarde's little shop. And by trading her an absurd amount of materials, you can go farm. And you can set up a wish list and go search the quest list by the wish list. Monster Hunter, are you listening? And just go on the missions that have those drops and go farm up whatever you want. And it's just nice, easy Monster Hunter light play because you're not getting the depth here that you're getting in Monster Hunter for a weapon system. None of the characters are as fleshed out as any of the individual weapon in Monster Hunter, and the fact that it forces you to take AI with you is gonna screw with some people if you go solo. But yeah, I've been having fun with it as a nice casual fallback game. Where over the last 4 weeks, I probably put about well, not 4 weeks. It didn't come out 4 weeks ago. 3 weeks. I probably put about 12 hours a week into it, and most of that hasn't been binge play. It's a really easy game to just pick up and play for a little bit and
You
then put
finished
down.
the primary story.
Yeah, the primary story is very short. It's if depending on how autistic you are about needing to go back and complete every side quest as it becomes available, you're looking at from 8 to 12 hours.
So at this point, when you're in the post game, like, how sticky do you think this game will be?
Uh, they promised a lot of post-launch support. Um, if Grand Blue had a bigger presence as an IP in the West, I think it would have a lot of sticking power. But without that sticking power in the West, I see it falling off in about a month.
What about for you personally?
Probably falling off in about a month. Yeah, I've
Speaking of moving on from games, did did that DLC for Elden Ring come out, or did they announce a release date, or is it a release
coming
timetable, or what?
coming in June.
Right, June.
Yep.
So no game is going to survive past that, basically.
Yeah, when June hits, we're getting Elden Ring 2 Electric Boogaloo. If it's like every other FromSoft expansion, the expansion it's a proper expansion pack and will be relatively large and will eat
And
up.
no media outlet will talk about anything else ever.
Well, I do like this about FromSoft's DLC releases. They release them at $15 to $25, but you get a full expansion pack. You get a whole like new zone and like one third of whatever the bosses are in the game usually. Like Bloodborne's
And then the
DLC,
Poison Swamp.
yeah, and always another Poison Swamp. Um, they'll find a way to put a Poison Swamp somewhere. In Dark Souls 3, they put two. Although originally, Dark Souls 3 DLC is a bit of an exception because it was supposed to be one DLC pack, and marketing came down on them and told them you got to split it up. So what they did to compensate for that was they made the DLCs slightly cheaper to compensate for it. So I think they were like $12.50 each because they were a little bit smaller because they were supposed to be one pack. But the way from Miyazaki said there's only going to be one DLC for Elden Ring. Probably this is the only one that's been in the works, and another one is not currently in the works. This is to tie up a few loose story ends and to just put more of the game out there. And it's sounding like it's going to be a pretty fun time going through that.
What is in the works?
We don't know.
They must be doing something.
They always play their cards close to the chest until they're ready for a reveal. FromSoft's not big on the early reveals. They don't pull a Todd Howard here, where they reveal Elder Scrolls 6 and then we still don't know anything about it.
But it just works.
Yeah, FromSoft won't show us anything until they've got enough ways into development that they feel confident this game's A, actually coming out, and B, is something they want to publish or put out.
And might actually resemble what they actually have to show.
Yeah. Like, I'm thinking of the Sekiro trailer. Nobody thought was expecting Sekiro when they announced it. And, but it had the FromSoft logo, and the more and more we saw the gameplay, it just looked like this game had been in the works for a bit, and they just been really focusing on cooking and had something decent. They waited until it was ready to show, and it was out in like a year after the reveal. So they usually come out within a year or so after the reveal. Elden Ring I think had a bit longer than that because Elden Ring was such a big game that they wanted to start the marketing cycle a little bit early. But usually they play their cards pretty close to their chest. Armored Core, same deal. We didn't see that until like it was almost ready to go, and we got it a year later. In fact, I think Armored Core was a matter of months. I think that was like 9 months that we got Armored Core after its reveal. But Armored Core was also a much smaller game. But still, yeah, looking forward to FromSoft's game coming out, or rather Elden Ring's expansion, because when people hear DLC or expansion, the reason FromSoft is able to cultivate such a diehard following, aside from the games themselves having not, thrown away the hand-holding nature of things. And yeah, they have their BS moments sometimes and gotcha moments, but people don't really care because you get such good value for your money out of these things. The hours of gameplay, of quality gameplay that you get from these games just by purchasing them is huge. And their DLC is no exception to that. It's been really good every single time. Every single DLC release so far has had the highlights of the game. Like, it's always they take what they learned in the base game and they figure out how to do it a little bit better for the DLC and put their best fights there. So, like, I'm thinking Slave Knight Gale, Santa Claus in Dark Souls 3, and Midir are some of the best bosses in that game, probably the best bosses in that game. Like Orphan of Cause in Bloodborne is one of the best bosses in that game. Like Artorias is the best boss in Dark Souls, the original, and all the DLC for Dark Souls 2 is better than the base game. Because the base game for Dark Souls 2, oh boy, Miyazaki had to come back in and save that one with the DLC, and he still couldn't salvage it. So yeah.
Poison Swamp.
Yeah, in Dark Souls 3, he shows the destroyed remains of the poison swamp in from Dark Souls 2 that had no appearance in the story of Dark Souls 3 whatsoever until the DLC came out. You wouldn't know these two worlds are connected, and they could have taken place in separate universes for all you knew. But he shows the wrecked old poison swamp in the second DLC for Dark Souls 3, and you have to trudge through it with homing lasers firing at you.
Even even his personal perception is the characteristic way that you indicate that a world is a particular world is by showing you their poison swamp.
Yes.
That man is a sadist.
He does like his swamp. And 19 curios to appraise. Okay, Burly Draft Man, give me my junk. Ooh, you gave me some good junk. That's a lie. You gave me garbage. You gave me a bunch of high rarity garbage, but you gave me garbage. I'll take the Shining Orb. I need those. Oh, I'll take the journal entry too. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do in Relink as far as upgrading and progressing your characters to make your numbers bigger and bigger, make yourself tankier, etc. Just make yourself able to handle bigger and bigger challenges as you go. I've still got the hardest 2 difficulties left, but I feel no need to rush them. I'm having fun with the game, and if I go ham with it, I'll burn it out. And I like its slot right now in my life as the after work game, and I don't. While the hardest difficulties may get eaten up next week or the week after, I feel like it still deserves another week or 2 in my life before I completely put it on the shelf. You know,
I see.
it's like it just fits so good in that little after work niche that I don't want to move it from that, because that niche is very hard for me to fill. For me personally, that's a very difficult niche to fill because I like to binge games. Even if I didn't have a full-time job that I'm working, I still prefer binging games over playing them piecemeal. And finding a game that I'm okay with playing piecemeal is a rarity. So I kind of want to keep things there. So yeah, I've been enjoying Relink, but the biggest selling point of Relink is, again, it's a finished game that they're going to continue to support, and it's not going to be live service.
Yeah, they had to delay it a few times, quite a few times.
Yeah, as long as you know what you're getting into when you pick up the game, like it's Monster Hunter Light with characters that are not as deep as any particular weapon in Monster Hunter, but it's fun. It's got a simple, by the numbers anime story where they have to put Lyria in a cage because she could just summon Bahamut to fix things, and she does summon.
Now.
In the finale, a few times she gets to summon Bahamut to fix things, and oh boy, does he fix things by blowing them up. And those are really cool moments in the story because it's not a cutscene. You get to play the scenes where Bahamut comes and Bahamut's all over things.
I've discovered something else about the Skyward Atlas, and that the belligerent little orb that gets summoned by it does not like wildlife. And so occasionally I'll be running along and a piece of fowl meat will just fall down on my head because the orb has just run off and murdered a bird that's taking flight.
I see this as a win. That sounds like
it is a complete win. It's free meat.
Yeah, that sounds a-okay to me. So yeah, and that's really all I got for my week. We got through because I've been going through it with Ibu on after weeks because he's game too, and we got through. There are so many difficulty levels and names in this game. Let me go to the quest counter. There are easy, normal, hard, very hard, and extreme we've cleared out. Each one has about 11 quests in it. And I have just unlocked Maniac, and after Maniac, there is Proud that I don't have unlocked yet. So 2 more difficulty levels to go, and My Charlotta is completely maxed except for all the in-game bonuses you can get, but her basic masteries are maxed out, and her weapon is at its basic level cap. And she's got full sigils that are not upgraded, but at least equipped. So she is baseline for in-game and nowhere else to go. Um, and I'm trying to work on the other party members that drag around. I unlocked all the characters at this point because once you finish very hard difficulty, you unlock all the crewmate cards and can just recruit everybody. And that's when they recruit at level 60 with over half their masteries unlocked. So I was holding off on unlocking them until now. So I just got a deluge of new characters to goof around with, and all I did was just throw the best sigils I had on them and get the weapon that I wanted for each of them crafted at the smith, and they're all just kind of sitting there now, and I got to decide which one I want to do anything with. But there
Is the
is
sheep available?
no, there is no sheep, unfortunately, no Anila.
Yet. They might bring her in as DLC.
They could. They have said there will be a way to earn new characters in game. They have not detailed the specifics of that though. So my team right now is Charlotta, Narmaya, EO, and a 4-slot rotates to whoever I need at the moment. At the moment, it's Lancelot, just because he's the best generic build I've got for the backups. Because I was considering trying him out. And then we got Protag, Catalina, Rackham, Wigan, Rosetta, Gorgonzola. What's his actual name?
Oh no.
Gandagoza. Yeah, Gorgonzola, Fairy, Bane, Percival, Siegfried, Cagley, Yodaraha, Zeta, Vasaraga, and guy from New Game, or from this game. So yeah, they're planning more characters. They're playing a lot of DLC quests. The first DLC quest that's coming out is a super boss. They're going to throw Lucilius in the game at level 200 when your level cap is 100, and he's supposed to be the super hard final challenge. And he's totally free. He's just coming in an update. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff coming with this game. Although I have been playing Relink, or rather Rising still as well. Though not nearly as hard as when I was going ham on it and trying to get to A rank. It's still a fun punching game, and they're actually coming with the first balance patch at the end of this month, I think, as well as new Grand Brew stages. Finally, because the middle 2 Grand Brew stages are both awful, and nobody ever wants to do them.
So do you lose because everybody stands there and does nothing?
No, what you get, the 2 middle stages in Grand Brews, it's like Fall Guys. So the first stage is always a race to the finish, and you will usually qualify because there's always a group of idiots that are AFKing just to try and grind their level while they're away from keyboard. So those people all get disqualified there. And then you go to the second of 3 rounds. And the second of 3 rounds has 2 options it can be. One is Golem Defense, which is a PvE mode where everybody works together to try and survive by killing enemies on the screen. If there's a lot of people, then this is trivial and half the people will go AFK. If there aren't a lot of people, you're frantically fighting for your life, trying to exploit the knockdown and vulnerability of the thing, of whenever you get pounded, the ground pound happens. And while this would be fine with a few number of people, the problem is it takes so long to get through this minigame because it has to time out to finish. So nobody ever wants to do it because it takes forever. And the other one is the gold collection minigame, where you're assigned to either green, blue, or red team. And they try to divide it as evenly as they can amongst the player base. And you have to go collect bricks and take them back to your safe house, your safe bubble, back at your home platform. And the team with the least bricks at the end is eliminated. So you want to not be the team that has the least. Now, the wrinkle in all this is little balls that turn you into an owl cat will spawn twice in the middle, where you can go steal from the enemy strongholds. And you can steal an absurd number of gold from them and just run away with it. So, and one spawns for the team in last place. A few baubles spawn specifically for the team in last place near the very end when there's like 30 seconds left. Now, what this functionally means is one team gets designated as the bully team pretty early on in the match, and that team is just bullied out of the match. So you have a 1 in 3 shot of getting stuck on the bullied team, and if you get beat up, you're just going to get knocked out. So yeah, that's how that works. And the last round is either one more bigger race to the finish map, one map that has bubs lifting weights and chucking bombs at you on a platform that gets progressively smaller, with you trying to knock bombs into each other to make the explosions bigger, but make the explosions bigger and more powerful. Because when bombs explode on top of each other, the next bomb's countdown will start and it'll explode bigger. So you want to punch the bombs towards your opponents and blow up bombs near them, so that the explosions from those bombs are bigger. But you still have a safe spot where you're not going to get blown up, and it's a very fun and chaotic minigame. The other one is a laser dodging minigame where you have to hop over a caterpillar machine, which is Catalina with robot arms, and it spins around and shoots lasers at a fixed rate that will suddenly speed up and slow down, and then return to its normal fixed speed. And then it will sometimes reverse directions on you, and you have to try to hopscotch the laser while not getting tapped by other players that are picking up weapons to make things more difficult for you to stay on the platform, and the last person on wins. So they're updating the two middle games. We're getting new Grand Brews stages all around, but people are mostly excited that the two middle games in Grand Brews are getting replaced because nobody wants to do those two games. And we're also finally getting balance changes. Some characters desperately need it. Any character that does not have a reversal needs help in Grand Blue Rising, because for those that don't know, reversals are your dragon punches, moves that you can do and that have minimal to no startup, where you're vulnerable and instantly come out with active frames to punish your opponent if they're just smashing on your head. Characters that don't have these in Rising are particularly weak because of the introduction of dashing light attacks, which are super fast to get out and can be spammed. So everybody that doesn't have a reversal to get the person spamming dash light attacks off them is in for a rough ride, just because they can be bullied if the player knows what they're doing and can time the dash and lights right. A bunch of the characters just need some general help with getting around keep away characters. And Matera herself, the keep away character, is particularly weak. Although there is one guy who is the Matera hero that is going to low tier her way all the way to the top bracket every single bracket reset. And he has been consistent about this since the game came out, that he hits master rank with Matera every single time. But aside from that one guy, Matera is impossible to play. Because zoning doesn't work so well when every character has dashing light attacks if it takes your projectiles 8 years to come out and you have to do setup beforehand. So hopefully the balance changes will address a lot of the issues, namely dashing light attack. In fact, if they just made dashing light attack 8 frame startup instead of 6, it would go a long way to fixing a lot of the problems. That would at least let some characters be able to just standing jab their way out of it. But yeah, hoping for Charlotta and Anila buffs. Anila probably won't get touched. She's middle of the pack right now and feels quite comfortable right there. Charlotta could use some help because her normals are so short range, and her heavy attacks in particular have a ton of startup. Cutting down some of the startup on those would be nice, and maybe a bit more damage on some of her specials because they kind of lag behind everyone else. And I would like to see about a 10% damage boost, not much, just a little bit. But and hope they do something about Belial, because Belial is just too easy to play for too much reward. But yeah, looking forward to that. We'll it's hard for me to do a fighting game on stream at the same time I'm doing the show, but maybe one week when I'm running the stream and Vaul and Fern are going ham talking about something that I don't have much input on, I can show some Rising to you guys on the stream since I'm running the rig now. You know, if Fern ever gets his internet fixed.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not something that he can do much about. He told me the other day when I asked him about how it was going that that they had sent out a specialist to try and fix things, but clearly that did precisely dick, and they have nothing to show for it. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how long it's going to take for them to get their stuff sorted out.
I'm going to do something very dumb, and I'm going to attempt a matchmaking quest in real time on the show while we cover the news topics.
Oh boy. I kind of wish you wouldn't because I don't know what the news topics are.
Oh, I can't cancel it, so we're stuck. It's gonna spin for a while though. Okay. So, unfortunately, a bunch of these news topics were things I threw in there that just seemed on the radar, but a bunch of them Fern would need some input on. Okay, I can cancel. Matchmaking failed. So yeah. What you call it? Let's see here. That's all I got for my week. I really didn't do very much. Played some Rising, did my dailies in Genshin, and I've just been too busy at work. I've got nothing major going on, but a whole bunch of little things, and just customers aggravating me. I I, I sent this to Fern and Vaul, and I'm not going to post this in live show chat to humiliate the guy because he did apologize later, or at least he owned up to it later. That he just sent me a blank schedule. Like the dude's just like, "Hey, can I get a price on the wild pumps in the system?" I'm like, okay, let me take. What? What things? There's nothing here.
It's written in invisible ink.
Yeah, well, sometimes there's literally a 0 there as a placeholder that just wasn't replaced. Like, yeah, let me get you that 0-volt motor. Hang on. Good
He just
gravy.
wants it to be really, really efficient.
So yeah, I've had little things like that all week that have just eaten my time and driven me nuts. So yeah, that's that. Um, anything respawned in Seed Hollow now the day, or not Seed Hollow? Alpha now the day's rolled over. Maybe I can go scrape some. So yeah. What'd you say? What we got here? Newslets. Stream still golden, so it looks good to me. All right. So continuing our Hoyoverse Spurgery. The thing that me and Vol probably have our most eyes on for this week is 4.5 getting announced. We've already talked about the Chronicled Wish, and we've already mentioned how I'm waiting on new Geo Girl to be my ammo dispenser. So yeah. One thing of note, this also would need Fern here to really go into, but when we were telling him about the characters, Arataki Ito, your boy Beetleborg, was there on the banner that's running right alongside New Geo Girl, and he's like, oh, he seems fun, and I sent him a video clip of him. He's like, oh yeah, I think I'll roll for him. I'm like, oh no.
Because we need more people with geo drivers, right?
Yeah, like if we all play, if Fern ever hits max level plays with us, this is just gonna be all Geo all day every day. Somebody's gonna have to drag Barber Official along to just apply Electro to something. Because it's just silly. But okay, sure, we'll go full retard with it. There's some kind of there's gonna be a new story with it. There usually is with the release of a patch. It's usually a minor story that's only around for the bit of the patch, and I doubt it'll be as big as these usually don't seem to be as big as Lantern Right story in terms of scope and how long it takes, from what I can tell. But it'll have bits of story we can do that'll be disappearing once it's gone. Genshin could really stand to have an event replay feature. You know what other game had a event replay feature that was just starting to get implemented? Pinecone.
Yeah.
And that wasn't that nice. Looking forward to seeing all the events we missed. Oh wait.
Well, I mean, I've been playing all the old events on Star Rail, so it's not like Hoyoverse doesn't know how to do it.
I don't know whether right now I'm mad at Hoyo for not having it, or at Pinecone for going away on me again, or rather at Crunchy for killing Pinecone. So yeah, and that's all that's really there for the Genshin patch aside from your standard stuff. New character, new weapon.
There was a certain amount of rage that came out because they introduced this feature which is supposed to guide new players of how to find the upgrade stuff they need.
Oh,
And it's like, oh well, this would be really, really good if this was game launch, because it basically only serves people who have never touched the game before.
mm-hmm.
It's like, well, how do you think you're attracting these new players though? Because yeah, your game is not really generous enough for that. People don't see it as much of a proposition going forward because your rates are so terrible. So yeah, I don't know. But most people were just mad because they saw this as like an extension of, oh well, look, MiHoYo doesn't care about the existing player base. They are just looking for new naive blood to scam more money out of. So well, I mean, I can't really argue with them, you know.
But it feels like
So this is basically a new player thing where it will show you like recommended gear, recommended weapons, locations where you can go to get the next upgrade stuff that you need. What are the most likely weaknesses in your party that are going to result in you dying or whatever? Like it looks like it would be really, really handy sort of induction mechanism for a game that has become reasonably complicated. In other words, basically the game in their portfolio that needs this most is Honkai Third. Since Honkai Third, you're not even supposed to like the community guide says don't attempt to play this without a player mentor because the game has gotten too complicated over the year. So I think that they would probably be better off putting it there, but yeah, I mean, this is what they've done, and people were pretty salty about that because it seems like they spent a lot of effort on this feature, but they don't seem to have any strategy in mind for luring in these new players that need it.
yeah, yeah. Well, suckering people to try Genshin probably isn't that hard. It's once they realize just how much money they would have to spend. I mean, you could find people that have just probably just not followed the news about how predatory Genshin is if they got a friend that plays it or something that recommends it to them or just mentions it around them or they download it and give it a shot. I guess this feature's for that type of person where they might potentially hook them if they can get them on the treadmill. But most people are still going to be scared away by the price tag at the end of the day.
Yeah, but it is their development of a feature which hitherto did not exist, so they must have something in mind. Though it's a mystery to me precisely what that might be.
Maybe 5.0 will be the great renaissance where they finally go back and implement quality of life features all over the rest of the map.
No, no, it won't because they would have totally announced that if that were the case.
Uh, it's like one can dream.
There's too much to be gained by them announcing something like that. So if they had something fairly confident, they would have done something. What is the purpose of these things, these arrows that point at you when you're electrified? I don't know what these are for. They're
Oh,
clearly a puzzle, but I can't work out what they want me to do.
you have to find all of them and get them all to point towards the notched part that lights up when you spin the arrow towards it.
Oh, okay. So they just need to point in that direction. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, are though. Here's one.
Do a simple quest,
Yeah.
killing goblins. That sounds like a winner. You know, as much as the food buffs are interesting in Monster Hunter and kind of iconic for it, it is nice just to be able to jump into a quest after you accept the quest instead of having to go run around town and eat food. I don't think Monster Hunter will ever get rid of the food munching section of the game, but just
Well,
some
people love that.
yeah.
It's super popular. People love the animations and stuff.
So yeah. And I think that's just about. Let me pause the game. That's just about everything for Genshin. Uh, yeah, I don't really see anything else we know right now. I imagine more of this, like the 4.4 update, they'll trickle out information about it as the weeks go on. It's a couple weeks out, I think.
Yeah, I think people are jonesing for some new content already. I mean, this it's a pretty good cadence, all told.
Yeah, Chenyu Vale was
Like,
quite big and had a lot of meat in there, but yeah. All right. Next up, we have Another one Fern that Fern probably has something to say about. Good old Toys for Bob, the people that are making all the PlayStation remakes these days, like the Crash Bandicoots, and were involved in Spyro. Um, they have gone independent. They have separated themselves from Activision, which
They've unshackled themselves from that Shoggoth corpse.
is good because a lot of their decisions that were more wackadoodle corpo for the remakes of the PSX games really screamed Activision to me. Like I think they did the Crash Team Racer remake. Like the way they set up that character unlock system and the way they set up their matchmaking, just the raw amounts you would have to play or spend money to get stuff done. Like this is stuff that got okayed in a corpo boardroom. This is not something that somebody designed because it was a good idea for a video game. A lot of fireball me. Witch Doctor. But yeah. So there's not a whole lot to announce on that or talk about really. It's just because they didn't say anything. But they've just they're independent now. Not under Activision shackles. So that's neat. If there's any more PSX remakes that keep happening, hopefully they won't have as many of the corpo issues that some of the other ones did. Although that said, they did manage to resist Bobbying all over them pretty hard for Crash Bandicoot and Spyro at least. Teammates, can you please go kill the archer that's sitting here spamming us with poison arrows? So yeah, that's one of the ones I got. You said you'd seen a little bit more about this one, about the Steam curator that's flagging people that have their games.
I didn't really see anything I would call information about it as such. All I saw was that there was a lot of chatter about it, and there was a great deal of butt hurt circulating around. Basically, people trying to signal their sort of superior maturity. It was sort of like the attitude is similar to the people who seem to really love going around talking about how the culture war doesn't real, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And how, it doesn't really matter if Sweet Baby are involved in development. It's not important. This is just you trying to make a culture war issue out of nothing, etc., etc. Like, it was pretty boilerplate stuff, I must say. I mean, in a sense, I feel like they're right, because anything that Sweet Baby is deeply involved in ends up turning completely cancerous and failing. Like, even if it is successful, like, for instance, their involvement in Last of Us 2. Like, even though Last of Us 2 sold, it permanently destroyed the legacy of that IP.
Yeah.
Like, nobody cares about Last of Us anymore. Last of Us was like a phenomenon for people who were desperate for a video game that could be like a Netflix show, basically. That's the impression that I get, is what they were after. But there's basically no future for that franchise any longer. It's been completely burnt to the ground by Last of Us 2. And Last of Us 2 is the way it was because of Cuckman and of Sweet Baby. But the thing is that they are technically involved in minor capacities in lots of things. There are some projects where the producer will give them a large amount of carte blanche to do what they want, and there are some where they are on staff so that the developer can say that they were on staff, and therefore, obviously, we are sensitive to issues with a capital I.
Yeah.
So this is all giving them calling them out as being involved in a project is simply a reasonable culture war tactic to toxify their contribution, their existence, really, in light of the fertile ground that has been tilled by their performance with Kill the Justice League. where they basically ruined another franchise there. Because basically they burn to the ground anything that they touch in proportion to how much influence they have over it. Because they're all no talent hacks without exception. None
Yeah.
of them have anything to contribute. But they all think that they do. That's what it comes down to. They all think that they're hot shit on toast.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they think they're God's gift to writing, and that the changes they make are absolutely necessary. I have no doubt they're fully convinced of this.
But yeah, they are essentially, they're a type of sensitivity reader. Nobody really cares what they have to say or what they think about anything. They are something that exists as a result of the games industry becoming convinced that they've got some kind of social duty.
Yeah, that and ESG scores.
Well, once upon a time that might have been the case, but the bloom has sort of fallen off the ESG flower of late. Like they're not ESG is not regarded as a safe thing to invest in as a company these days. ESG is sort of more um, this is one of your potential options to court investor money. However, it is not really a safe one. There's a lot of risk involved because ESG is increasingly being seen as a dangerous prospect because you are not really in control in any meaningful way of how you're assessed. So if you decide you're going to go that route, you're at risk of going to a lot of effort to accomplish essentially nothing.
I see.
So it's not what it once was. What it was once upon a time sort of regarded as kind of like a surefire way of securing a certain amount of like venture capital from BlackRock subsidiaries and Vanguard subsidiaries and so on, who are throwing money around with a sort of like a culture war purpose in mind. But basically, the short version of it is that these big investment firms noticed go woke, go broke, and they don't really want to be on the go broke side of that equation. It seems to me, based on that behaviour, that in fact the people spearheading ESG were exactly as credulous as the people buying into them. They weren't Machiavellian geniuses. They actually thought that they could pull this off without any kind of backlash, without any kind of like no, the people involved were not going to be sufficiently discerning for it to matter. They were just going to accept, oh well, I guess this is the way things are now, as far as ESG was concerned. They did not continue to. They did not believe that people would react in a specifically ESG directed way. But realistically, so many people have to deal with ESG being a pain in the neck at their day job now that their opinion of it as an exercise has dropped like a stone, even if they have no opinion on the culture war proper. Like I was sort of hacked off about it because I am under pressure to conform to all of these bizarre things that I'm expected to conform to in regard specifically to um, completion or having people check boxes and concerning things like the they have received official company training on sustainability, let's say, and this is something that I'm kind of sort of expected to concern myself with at length.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, nobody wants that. Nobody cares about that. That sucks. Everybody hates that. Um, it's not it's not something that you can ignore as happening to somebody else anymore because it will proceed to harass you at every turn. So yeah, it's definitely it's star is not ascendant right now.
Yeah.
That seems to be the general consensus.
I've heard less of it than before, but it's still around. I still
Oh, it's
hear.
definitely still around because that type of that type of gradual loss in confidence. Like this isn't like an injection of uncertainty. This is sort of like a creeping loss of confidence that sort of is manifesting a little bit at a time over a period of time. It's like because they don't want to put it away because that would be tantamount to claiming that it was wrong, and they don't want to do that because that would put them on the outs with the progressives. What they want to do really is to sort of gradually let it fade from existence. The idea was always that, oh, well, through victory in the culture war, explicit ESG will no longer be necessary because it will have been replaced by implicit ESG, because everybody is now thinking the same way. But that didn't happen. So basically, the only option available to them is to pretend as though it did and just let all of the bullcrap fade from people's memory a bit at a time, and then try again later when people are less sensitive to it, because it depends on people to a great extent not noticing.
Yeah. So it'd be the way it be with them. I have never followed Sweet Baby particularly and what they do. I haven't really.
Well, nobody has, because they went out of their way to move only within those circles, right? You know, the California circle, the Seattle circle, like those places where, well, Canada particularly, those places where there were a lot of there's a lot of development going on, and they need not come into contact with opposing viewpoints.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the thing to keep in mind is that, you know, in addition to everything else, they are your sort of archetypical fragile snowflakes. The idea of having to confront someone who disagrees with them is nauseating to them. That's why their mission statement as a company is essentially to turn the whole world into a progressive utopia, because that way they'll never have to face any kind of disagreement. Anybody who disagrees with their point of view will be marginalized by the culture as a whole, and they won't need to worry about having to oppose it themselves. So they stayed on the down low because most people are just not concerned with crap like that. They aren't interested.
Yeah.
But they saw this as a means of accomplishing their ends in regard to the culture through a really influential media outlet where they did not have to be exposed. Because as we all know, that developer environment, that tech bro environment, is a monoculture. Everybody there thinks the same things, acts the same way. They like the same movies. They like the same video games. They don't. None of them read. They're all, well. They read their gender studies lecturers lecture handouts. That's basically what they read. Um, in general, they were able to propagate their bullshit for an extended period of time. Like Sweet Baby are not a new thing. They're not really an old thing either, but they have been moving in the background of a lot of very big name games for an extended period of time. And basically, the guy who's got his Steam, who's been flagging Steam games as being Sweet Baby games, is basically doing a awareness raising campaign that there is a culture war effort being deployed against video games as a whole, and people ought to at least keep in mind that there are people involved in the industry who do not have video games in mind at all. That's not the objective. The video games are the means, not the end.
Yeah. It's just the very idea of a narrative consultant or a sensitivity trader being brought into a company, that would make me walk from that company if you threw me in front of that person immediately. Like, this is why I will always be self-employed, probably my whole life. Like, the second you bring somebody in that's going to tell me how I need to think, you're done. We're done. Go find somebody else to do this job.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a skill set that can be deployed as a self-employed individual. Well, maybe that's not strictly true. There are a few who have done it in the past as consultants, but you need to have some kind of credibility for that. And in the modern world, the way you get credibility is by being a progressive. So I'm not going to do that. So I'm stuck being a wagey.
Yeah, I'm the guy that's willing to show up to the job site and say, "Hey, distract the lady who looks like she's going to call somebody if I do something a little weird." Then just go jump in the hole and fix the pump. Or, all right, hang on, the engineer doesn't know what he wants. Let me do his job for him. You'll have to ask him to get drawings later. But I'll
Ah,
do.
the engineers. You love engineers.
I hate engineers. When I saw my granddaddy working, and he was an engineer, that's his primary job, running the company, and he's doing all this work, sizing all the pumps properly, and calculating flow rates, and he's doing all the drawings, and trying to make sure everything works out okay with all the systems. And it's like, okay, that's a respectable job. That takes a lot of effort and work, and he clearly is dedicated to making sure he does things correctly. And all that math seems like a lot of numbers, but he's putting in the effort to do it himself. Actual engineers, copy paste. That's it. That's all they know how to do.
But I spent years learning all of that stuff. Georgia Tech is supposed to be a well-known and well-established engineering school.
Not for the last 10 years. Well, yes, it is for the last 10 years, but I'm here to tell you the quality of people coming out of Georgia Tech this last decade and change, not super high. Like they do have the occasional engineers that come out of there. I know one guy that went to go work for NASA out of there, right out of high school when he graduated and went to Georgia Tech and then straight to NASA. But the quality of he's the radical exception. For the most part, people go there, get an engineering job, and go work in an engineering firm. And what I hear from actual established engineers about these new hires coming out is they're all you expect somebody new at a job to take a while to acclimate to it, to really feel comfortable in the job and to be able to perform the role adequately and on demand. That takes a little bit. But what these guys are noticing is these kids just aren't acclimating to the work environment. The work environment just doesn't seem to click with them, and they have to ask permission for everything. And it's not asking for another pair of eyes on something that looks a little odd. It's like, or just in general to make sure you didn't typo anything. It's they generally are too scared to go ahead with anything without somebody else telling them to. And
Yeah, unfortunately, I've got that issue to some extent as well with my staff. Like unfortunately there are mainly two types of people. There's a third type of person, and the third type of person is people with common sense. But most people fall in either the group of people that will recklessly just attempt to do a thing, and people who literally won't do anything unless somebody tells them precisely what to do.
yeah, and apparently the engineering field is full of the latter right now. I just uh, that's what all the engineers that I know that are established engineers are telling me, and I'm getting a whole lot of specs from these people, and they just don't know how to do the job. Like the amount of it's they are so scared of deviating from the master spec on for their company on this type of system that when I give them a call, like if it's a kid on the line, it sounds like they're about to have a heart attack. They sound genuinely afraid of what I'm going to say to them. Like, dude, I'm just calling you to tell you that your schedule's wrong. And this fragile is the best word I can put for it. These kids just sound like they've never heard somebody say, "Hey, you messed this up. Can you fix it?" before in their life.
Well, didn't they all get raised in the No Child Left Behind education system?
They did.
So they've probably never been allowed to fail at anything before.
Yeah, like uh, like if a customer calls me, it's like, hey, the prices on this look a little messed up. Oh, hang on, let me check. I might typoed something, and I keep it casual and can have a normal conversation with them. Like, oh yeah, that happened. Hang on, I'll redo it for you. It's happened once or twice, not often, but once or twice in the hundreds of quotes I send out every year, and that's just it doesn't even register with me. I forget about it the next day. But these kids, the way they respond, you'd think this was a life altering event from me just picking up the telephone and calling them and going, "Hey, so you didn't actually list a flow rate that makes any sense at all." I tell it to them nicer than that too. Usually, like, "Hey, you requested a 1632 at 50 GPM at 25 feet ahead, but that's way too big for what you actually need. Do you want me to downscale that to something more reasonable?" And they're like, like I've just traumatized them by asking that.
I mean, depending on the type of company, you may actually be for the high jump if you make a tiddling mistake like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just I don't get the kids these days or engineers these days. The older engineers I can talk fine with.
Well, I think that one of the things that you really don't get is what it's like to work in a company that has an HR department.
Yeah, because I've avoided doing that for my whole life.
If you work in a company with an HR department, it is not the job, like it's not the task before you that you have to satisfy. It's Karen. And if the people in HR and the people in accounting don't like what you've done for any reason, they can make your life hell because as a company increases in size, it increasingly revolves around keeping the people in HR and the people in accounting happy. And the actual successful accomplishment of your job has less and less to do with it.
Yeah. I've avoided this type of work environment my whole life and will continue to avoid it for as long as humanly possible. If I can, I will ride the current job I've got to my grave. But it's we'll have to see. It's just it mind boggles me that these kids are just scared to death of a simple phone call from me. And if I was, I would. The thing I can't ever see myself working at a corporate type company that has an HR department. Like you know exactly what I would do if somebody came up to me and started telling me you need to do this, this, that, and the other thing. Be like, lol, okay, bye.
Well, you live in a company that is uniquely equipped to permit you to avoid that because while the United States is only a shadow of what it used to be, it has at least got a heritage of being a place where you can start a business.
Yeah,
Most places in the world starting a business is murderously difficult.
yeah. It's right now. If I had to jump through all the hoops currently to set up a incorporated company like the one I'm running right now, oh boy, it'd be a nightmare. I already hate Brad Raffensperger enough for the election stuff. Forget having to deal with his Secretary of State BS just keeping the company going. To register a company, you might actually want to kill somebody by the end of the process. That's a health hazard. Speaking of, the Georgia Senate finally kicked him off the election council.
Yeah, but did they kick him off it and then try him for treason? Because if
He's
not, that wasn't enough.
They kicked him off and immediately started an investigation on his butt. So we don't know. No, I won't be satisfied until he's hanging from the gallows. But you didn't hear that on YouTube. Oh man, now my government's gonna come get me, ain't they?
Well, that is what they do.
Oh well.
It's like America has gone from being quote land of the free unquote to being most famous for the feds coming for you if you say something wrong.
Yeah, our feds are quickly getting the reputation of the KGB because it's functionally what they
Well,
are.
I mean, all of the feds that you have in the current generation are basically trained by the KGB to be KGB. That was the whole point of the demoralization project that the KGB ran during the Cold War, was to replace your sort of like managerial elite with communists.
Yeah. So yeah, uh, I will continue to fight that battle my whole life. I don't know if I'll keep winning it. I don't know how successful I'll be, but I'm gonna keep trying. And I sincerely doubt I'm living past 65 anyway. So already halfway there. Over halfway there. Holy crap, I'm getting old. All right. The other news slip wasn't anything. It was just a Warhammer joke I threw in there. But Warhammer coming to Call of Duty.
Isn't everything? I really, really don't like this whole cross promotional thing that everybody is doing these days. Like, ultimately, when it gets beyond like being an extreme rarity, the only thing you can accomplish is to utterly cheapen your own IP.
Yeah,
Like
I
it's
don't.
just strictly a bad thing.
These days, especially, I don't mind in like doing crossovers within your own company. Like if Grand Blue Rising was to do a crossover with Pinecone, for instance. We use this example because it's a wish list item, but I'll use it as a better example here too. It's I would be okay with that because Princess Connecting and Grand Blue are from the same company. People know they're from the same company, and companies in general have a bigger presence than they used to as a name and what you can expect from their products. So them crossing over with themselves to promote their other products doesn't bother me that much. When we start getting to like emulating Fortnite and just having whoever's willing to sign a deal with you crossover, that's when it just gets obnoxious.
But I mean, that's where we're heading because it's one of those situations where everybody looks at Fortnite money and expects that, oh, we just need to do the same thing and then we also get Fortnite money. Like
Yeah.
the same mistake that has been made since time immemorial in regard to things like the WoW Killer MMO, for instance. Oh, well,
Hmm.
all we need to do is exactly what World of Warcraft is doing, and then we'll make World of Warcraft money. Like, this is the logic that people use, and it is foolhardy to say the least.
It does not sound for like a recipe for success to me, but what do I know? I'm just a customer.
Yeah, it's just your money that they want.
Random forge some of the basic weapons for these characters. The whole reason I was farming those baby quests so that I can get their weapon bonuses. So yeah, even in Relink, even if you don't plan on using a weapon, having the weapon and having it leveled up is still useful because every 25 levels of you get a bonus for having the weapon. Then every 25 levels, you can put mastery points into the weapon to get permanent stat buffs, regardless of whether it's equipped or not. So I'm sitting here trying to farm all these baby materials from Easy Quests, trying to unlock every character's weapon, all their weapons, so that I can just have the stat boosts. So if you're wondering why I was bullying a griffin earlier that had like no HP, that's why. But yeah,
You bully Griffin. Why the Griffin bully?
Griffin's mean. If you do him at gear appropriate, he's really annoying because he has a very long phase where he's not attackable.
And what, you just run around in circles waiting for him to be attackable again?
You play Final Fantasy 14 and dodge the circles. Yeah, they most of the major bosses have a phase that is the don't get hit phase. But not all of them go away during the don't get hit phase. Some of them you can still do some damage to at least. But the Griffin, he's so high up on screen. Maybe if you're playing Rackham or Zeta or somebody, you can throw crap at him. But Charlotta, nah. Charlotta can jump really high, but she is not very tall. Her sword is very short, much to her chagrin.
Maybe she's compensating for something.
Um, uh, like what? Anyway, uh, so the obligatory Monster Hunter manually saved the game. All right, I think we're gonna start wrapping up. We've been going long anyway. All right, you got any closing comments for us in us out here?
Not really, not really. I just want Fern back. It's too hard to do a show without him.
Yeah, Fern's better at keeping topics bouncing than we are, and we
Because he
miss.
has got a schedule.
Yeah, and we have this our day off, and so we can just keep on going and rambling.
Yeah, our brains just turned to sludge by this point in the week.
Yeah. So, all right, folks. I think we're done. We will see you next week. Oh wait, was a good emote. Stand on the boxes because Charlotta's sit emote is just to stand on boxes. Sayonara. Bye bye.